Special City Council meeting of August 9th, our council retreat. And I turn it over to Leroy.
I think first we'll do our introduction so Kirsten knows who we are, and then we'll introduce Kirsten, our moderator. So if we skip Kirsten to start with and start with Kim, if we would introduce and our title, so she kind of puts names and faces together.
I'm Dan Cassidy, I'm planning director. Cindy Baker, Public Works Director.
Sean Stanton, Director. Sean Price, Economic Development Director.
Don Sawyer, Chief of Police.
Billy Wheeler, City Attorney.
Lee Thomas, Ward 3 and President.
Leroy Alsop, City Manager.
Steve Gatling, Mayor.
Jeff Taylor, Ward 2. Jim Case, Ward 1.
James Long, Ward 1.
Don Channel, Ward 3.
Suzette Chang, Library.
Stephen Fulton, Tourism Director. Matthew Coe, Myers Engineering.
Bill Myers, Myers Engineering.
And on play-by-play, we have Chris Evans and Aaron Ryburn behind the scenes. Kirsten Lindsay is site coordinator at Francis Title Business Innovation Center and Market Development Center for Municipal Excellence. She also does this type of exercise with the City of Edmond. So she has experience, and she did ours a couple of years ago. Kirsten, any introductory remarks you'd like to make?
A couple of quick things. We're going to attempt this. I'm going to pass this around to you. Just put your first name on it and then stick it on the front. It's really humid, so I don't know how well it's going to work, but we'll try it. I heard all the names. I just can't promise that I'll remember them all in the next 30 minutes. I may start to get everybody I just want to be sure I can identify you by name. My role here obviously is just to facilitate, to moderate the discussion. We've all sat through these kind of things that we had a feeling like it was a waste of our time or we weren't heard or whatever. So I'm here to try to elicit from each of you your thoughts and ideas, and then work to coalesce or boil them down to a plan that then the staff can use for the year going forward. So I'm excited to be here. Just a couple housekeeping things, aside from the lunch break, if everyone agrees, I don't think we need to organize bathroom breaks or anything. Everyone's adult, they can decide for themselves maybe when they need to do that, and that way we'll just kind of keep the day moving forward. Does that sound okay?
Some intro remarks. This year, this will be a multi-step process. Today's retreat is for input from the City Council and their guidance. Two big takeaways that we need today from the City Council is one, priorities for the next 12 to 24 months. And secondly, how do we want to use the remaining 10 to 11 years of the CIP sales tax so that we can kind of plan for the future on what you all see us doing with the sales tax money. We will have, after the day, a follow-up meeting with our moderator, Kirsten, and city staff to prepare documents compiling the results of today and maybe flushing out some of the details on the top 10 priorities as far as milestones, who's responsible, budget, those kind of things. We will bring that more finished document back to a future council meeting for discussion, review, and hopefully adoption by the City Council as our strategic plan for the next 12 to 24 months. The other night at council meeting, I give you a paperweight. I hope you all looked at that this morning and thought, one Guthrie, one plan, one team, Team Guthrie. And hopefully we thought about that. The last opening remark that I would make is, I read the other day, some people listen to learn, some people listen to respond. And those are two completely different things. And I hope today, initially, we're listening to learn. With that, I will start with the first presentation, and this is a PowerPoint on opportunities and challenges. A lot of you have a good handle on the areas of work that the various city departments do, but sometimes it's hard to imagine the magnitude. Tenny, how many employees do you have for all your departments? Budget.
20, kind of fluctuates, about 23 to 25 current.
And how many vacancies of that do you have?
8 to 10.
Okay. So this first part we're going to go through is under Tenny, and you just heard he's got roughly 25 people, and of course he's got 8 to 10 of them not even filled. But the water supply and treatment, of course, the sources of our water are Guthrie Lake, Liberty Lake, and intake at Cottonwood Creek. We have a 24-inch raw water line capable of providing 7 million gallons a day of water to the water plant. We have the intake pump station at Cottonwood Creek, and we have a water treatment plant that has 6 million gallon per day capacity, and our average daily production is 1.2 million gallons a day. So we do have plenty of capacity at the water treatment plant. But that in itself is a lot of things to maintain. At the lakes, you have to maintain the dams, you have to maintain the spillways. So you have to mow. So all these things take a lot of time. And remember the limited number of staff that we have. Water distribution network. We got 76 miles of water distribution lines. And I will point out, some of these numbers haven't been updated for a while, but so they're not going to be exact, but it gives you an ideal. The water lines, of course, include PVC, cast iron, and some ductile iron pipe. We got some water lines that are approaching, if not exceeding, 100 years old. A lot of our older water lines have a pretty significant buildup of chemical residue in them, not contaminants, but chemical residue, which creates challenges when you flush lines or have water breaks. That stirs up in the water, and that's where we get a lot of the taste in areas. So that's a challenge. We have 3,600 water meters. That number is a little bit different now with the settlement with rural water. Over 1,400 fire hydrants, 4 water towers to maintain that have to be there for our system to work, 3 booster stations to add pressure, and a 12-inch main line that supplies water to Langston University. On the sanitary sewer or wastewater treatment, our wastewater treatment plant is 1 million gallons using a trickling filter process on what is normally referred to as a dry day or normal weather conditions. We process or treat about 800,000 gallons per day. On what is commonly referred to as a wet day or when you have heavy rains or floods, we exceed that capacity. We do have some storage basins that we can temporarily put some of that in and then treat it over time. And one thing you might be aware of is that our wastewater treatment plant sets in the floodplain, which creates some challenges when you have a flood. This last flood, we had to abandon our plant. We couldn't get people in and out. We did notify EPA and work with them. The plant was built in 1955. Other than a new digester in 2008, it's not had any major upgrades since 1986. So that gives you an idea of the condition of our wastewater treatment plant. On the sewer collection side, We have 87 miles of sewer lines with over 1,200 manholes to maintain. Part of the issue on the wet days of the overgoing our capacity at the sewer plant, of course, is infiltration and inflow into that 87 miles of water lines, and we're constantly trying to improve that. There's 7 lift stations to maintain. The collection system still contains many vitrified clay pipe, gravity lines, and brick and mortar manholes. With that, I would point out the Guthrie Public Works Authority is an enterprise fund and should be run very similar to a business. And we will talk later today about a master plan. We should have a plan that sets forth how we're going to maintain and replace the water treatment plant, the sewer plant, how we're going to maintain and replace the sewer lines and water lines on a rotation basis. Right now on the water lines, we're on the 100-year plan, and we're at the 100th year, so we need to start replacing them. We should be more like on a 30-year cycle where we replace the lines over 30 years. Well, I don't know if our community will buy into the total cost it will take to maintain the system, but at least we should have a plan and present that, and then somewhere start working towards fully funding our utility systems so that we have quality systems. You can only Band-Aid it so long. Another example is trash. Waste Connections, as their rates have went over when's the last time we did a solid waste fee increase, Kim?
I want to say it was prior to 08.
So every time Waste Connections increase their fee to the city's been absorbing that. So we lose revenue. Our margin is no longer what it was in 2008. Well, at some point, we're going to have to decide, do we want revenue to operate the city or not? And if we do, as their rates go up, we need to pass that on to the customers rather than absorb it. And we'll be having that discussion in September of each year, roughly, is when we get our cost adjustment from Waste Connections based on CPI. At that time, we'll be discussing again, are we going to absorb it or are we going to increase our rates to pass that on? Stormwater, a lot of communities have a stormwater utility and charge a fee for all of your impervious area that contributes to the demands on the city maintaining a stormwater system to deal with stormwater. We don't have that. I'm not sure I'm really excited about doing that. Most towns, when you implement a stormwater fee, you normally change city managers. So I'm not really excited about that one. Streets and bridges, 144 miles of streets and 14 bridges. Many of our bridges are critical bridges as far as, one failure on any part of the bridge makes the entire bridge fail. And our bridges are getting old. And of course, we all know the bridge at Harrison Street needs to be replaced, but we got some not far behind it. We got traffic signals, street lights. We have to do street striping, storm drains and drainage ditches to maintain. We do tree trimming and brush removal in our right-of-way, guardrail maintenance. We maintain the sidewalks downtown and curbs, the historic street lights on Oklahoma Avenue from the railroad to Wentz. It's a different situation on Harrison. Street sweeping and barricades for special events. All of the special events are positive for the town, but you have parks, streets, police, fire, all dedicate a lot of man hours throughout the year for special events. A couple years ago, just the 89ers event, we calculated our normal man-hours cost, our material cost, and our overtime cost, and we had $40,000 invested in the 89ers event. So there's a lot of work to supporting all the special events. They're good things, but they do come with a cost. Fleet services, we have 85 vehicles and 35 pieces of equipment. Many of those vehicles and pieces of equipment are past their useful life, and so maintenance is a nightmare. Of course, we have numerous small equipment, generators, air compressors, mowers, and trimmers that we maintain, and we do farm some of the vehicles out, correct, Tenny?
Yes, most of all, fire.
Parks and public grounds. We have 405 acres of parklands, which include 5 parks and 2 lake areas. We have an 80-acre city-owned cemetery to maintain, and of course, then we also open and close graves. 3 athletic fields, which cover approximately 20 square blocks, Cottonwood Flats, Owens Field, and Kiwanis. We mow the highway right-of-ways on 77 South, which is South Division, and 33 Highway or Noble, east to west. We have swimming pool maintenance, and again, special events, trash removal under parks and public grounds. And then we have the convenience center for solid waste disposal and recycling. We've already talked about the fire department some, and by the way, Eric's not here today. He'll be here this afternoon, but he had grandmother pass away, so he's at a funeral this morning, or otherwise he would be here, and he'll probably get back for this afternoon part of the session. Fire department covers the Guthrie city limits and 1 rural fire district we cover. Our area encompasses 141 square miles. We have mutual aid agreements with 15 other rural fire departments. Our call statistics in 2014 was the last one I had available yesterday evening when I was putting about together, but 1,200 fire incidents. EMS covers about 2/3 of the eastern side of Logan County. Well, I double put that one in, excuse me. Call statistics, yeah, I wanted to emphasize that one. It wasn't a mistake, I was emphasizing it. Over 1,700 EMS medical calls. You add those together, that's 3,000 calls. You got 365 days. They're making more than 1 incident a day. Police department, I apologize, I didn't really get a lot of call statistics, but it's divided into the operation division, which is our routine patrol and emergency service. It also, within this division, is our bike patrol, special response team, lake patrol, traffic enforcement, school resource officers, and our reserve peace officer program. And then, of course, our detectives, their criminal investigation. And in that, we have a division that has grant-funded office of 2 victim advocate services that are predominantly provided by grant funds, and communication division, and they receive about 20,000 calls a year. And we do the city, the fire department, the rural fire departments, and the county calls come to us first, and then we relay them to the county. And then, of course, animal control, dealing with stray and abandoned or vicious or nuisance animals. Chief, do you remember how many calls, police department, I know 20,000 dispatch calls. Do you remember roughly how many calls the police department has a year?
We have on average 670 calls in a week.
Okay.
That's not every call for service for police.
Yeah. The airport, the runway's 5,000 feet long, 70 feet wide, can accommodate a vast majority of general aviation and business jet aircraft, and is considered jet capable. The airport terminal building includes fixed-based operator, a pallet lounge, office space and conference room. These numbers may be dated, but the airport is home to 122 general aviation aircraft, and with the expansion of the T-hangars to the northwest, will soon be up around 130 based aircraft. If you will notice, on this side of the airport, we have about 27 acres for future development. But just like when we talk about the industrial park later, 27 acres doesn't mean a lot if you don't have the utilities to it. Before we can develop that side of the airport, we're going to have to extend utilities across the runway to this side if we ever want to develop that in the future. One of the problems with our airport, historically, when we set it up, and many airports are the same way, it's not unique to us, but the price we charge for land to put a private hangar on does not pay for the cost of operating the airport. So you're discounting the resource that you have at the airport to bring these planes in, and I know they provide benefits beyond just the amount of money they pay, but when it comes to paying running the airport, that comes from revenue generated airport, and then is supplemented by, of course, our general fund, and then and with the partnership with Edmond, half of it comes from City Edmond as well. Our fixed-based operator, we basically give that operation away 15, 20 years ago. The city built the building, and we give the fixed-based operator a lease to control the building. I think his lease has at least another 25 years on it, where he has complete control of a building, just like it's his building, but the city built it and paid for it. I'm not sure that's a decision we would make today, but some of the decisions and revenue from the airport was locked in way before Shalon and I even came to Guthrie. So we're struggling with that. There's things that we can't change, and trying to figure out how to enhance revenue at the airport is quite a challenge. Correct, Shalon?
Correct.
Additional basic service, I didn't want to get into a lot of details because of our time limitations, so I'm not doing proper respect to all of these, but of course you got administration, the clerk's office that also does finance, utility bill, purchasing, payroll, budget. We have municipal court, planning and zoning, code enforcement. I believe this year, now some of these will be multiple offenses on the same property, but I think enforcement, we're going to have 1,200?
This year, we're going to have probably around 1,000.
1,000?
Yeah, look, we probably expect more around 1,200 for next year, but right around 1,000 for this year.
So we deal with 1,000 property violations a year. Building codes, library, which you could do a whole page on the library, tourism and economic development. Now I want to talk about preparing for future opportunities. In my mind, community development and economic development go hand in hand. And I kind of relate it to if you're going to ask a special girl to the prom, unless you're good looking like Councilman Long, and you don't have to prepare, you know, most of us, you know, go get a haircut and shave and normally put some nice clothes on before we go ask the lady out to the prom. Same way with industries. If you're not prepared to be attractive to business and industry, it doesn't matter whether you got industrial park incentives. you're still not going to be attractive to that industry because you haven't done anything to prepare the community to be a community that they want to locate in. So if you look at amenities to retain and attract young families, skilled workforce, small business entrepreneurs, that's what's going to be the base of what makes our communities grow. That is also the type of environment that attracts business and industry, that type of talent. Quality schools. Most decisions made on where people live that are young families are based on quality schools. Quality health care. And rural health care is becoming more challenging all the time. Trail systems, bikeability, walkability is a big thing with the younger generation. Parks with things like splash pads, disc golf, picnic pavilions, arts in all mediums. People don't realize how important the fabric of the community to have art in your community, festivals, pilot theater, place to mingle, restaurants, coffee shops, brew pubs. Young professionals like to get together in quality places where they can exchange ideals and cooperative ventures. A vibrant downtown with visually appealing buildings. A mix, boutique, specialty shop, antique stores. Special events, bicycle rallies, red brick nights, territorial Christmas. Those are things we need to invest in. The things I went through earlier are basic core services that we have to provide, but if we're going to move our community forward, we need to look at these type of things to create the environment to be attractive, to bring people to our community. I won't go through a lot of detail, but in 2015, of course, we were successful in passing a $16 million bond issue, built a new elementary school, made improvements to several of the school districts. And it's funny how the front door of your school system is just as important to the perceived quality as the education that they get inside the building. And then this year, of course, we passed the new bond issue on April 2nd, where we will replace one of the antiquated elementary schools, Cotterill, and continue to do things like enhance school security entry points. This particular facility was too open, and it will make it more of a secure entry point and continue improving technology. This roll bar instead of a push button makes it a little difficult. The Meridian Technology Center, purchasing land for a campus in Guthrie. That's an important thing for workforce development, and my understanding they plan to start construction of their satellite campus in Guthrie this fall, and that'll be a big win for us on South Division. Hospitals, I won't get into that, but rural health care is a challenge, and we need to support, to the degree that we can, our local hospital and our local health care network. It's very easy in a rural community, wake up someday and there's a notice that the hospital's going away. And I mean, El Reno lost their hospital. All over Oklahoma, rural hospitals closed. It's important to us as a community to support our rural hospital to the degree that we can figure out how to support them. And there, again, image is important. We went through the ambulance service, and we're trying, the other night when we did the budget workshop, I talked about things that we're doing to try to enhance our revenue collections and revenue stream for health ambulance. We did the disc golf course in Highland Park as one of the improvements. We funded that with CIP money. That brings people to town from all over the state. And feedback we get. It's a high quality disc golf course. Parks, we resurfaced the tennis courts in Highland Park. We resurfaced the tennis courts in Mineral Wells. And we added, is it pickleball for old guys like you, Mayor?
It is pickleball.
Oh, yeah, well, you're too slow to play tennis. There's a game called pickleball. And then we added a new basketball court, again, out of the CIP sales tax. Banner Park, we created a new park. I'm sorry I don't have an update overhead, but we have picnic shelters for families can go and get out of the heat and have get-togethers. We have a walking trail, and we're trying in all our areas as we do them, put walking trails. Hopefully, eventually, we will connect all these walking trails throughout our community to tie retail, housing, school, and parks together. In our walking trails, we're doing them 12-foot wide so we can accommodate both walking and other modes like skating and bicycling. We did our first splash pad in the community at Banner Park, and it's been well received. We have ADA handicap playground equipment and pour in place play surface. And that's our first fully handicapped playground area. And we plan to do more of that in the future. It has had impact in the neighborhood. We're seeing some houses that are being flipped and turned around as a result of the investment in Banner Park.
Mayor, if I could, City Manager, if I could interject, that house that you put up there.
Yes.
I think it's real important for people to know that because of the investment in that area with the park and so forth, that house sold for record price per square foot. It sold for over $125 per square foot for a renovated home in Guthrie. So investing in things like that is definitely helping bring house values up.
Thanks for that input. Trying to improve the community downtown with new signage or banners to promote downtown. We refurbished the downtown lamppost. One of the things we probably need, the chamber is kind of taking the lead on the project, but we probably need to support them as more wayfinding signs for people as they come into town on where different things are and make that connection. So we'll try to work with the chamber on their wayfinding sign project. The downtown streetscape project, what we're trying to do is enhance the Division Street without being detrimental to the historic viewshed of Harrison, Oklahoma. This one is projects funded. We're using to match the ODOT grant, we're using money from the Mumford & Sons concert that we set aside for that project. We have added some things that will come out of CIP that was not in that project originally. When I got here, I recommended that we added permissive turn signals so that you have a left turn signal at the intersections in the future, which will be great relief on traffic congestion downtown. And instead of turning from yellow to red, they'd go flashing yellow, so if there's not traffic coming, you can turn. And we're going to put some trees in a few select areas to provide more of a corridor definition and enhance it. We will actually end up with more parking along Division Street when this project's done than we currently have. We've talked about the Land and Water Conservation Grant in Mineral Wells Park and some of the things there. Again, another splash pad, replace our playground equipment that's over 20 years old, some additional picnic pavilions, all with themes and appearances to look appropriate in a historic park. And we are working with the HPC to make sure that we're all in agreement that what we're doing blends in with the concept of the historic park. One new feature that we're looking at that we're trying to look at is a wheelchair swing to add to the playground equipment. This is a concept for green space and entertainment venue downtown. I would note that this is just a concept. The location can be changed, the plan can be modified. I know that Councilman Long has some particular issues with this project, but there are other green areas in downtown that could be explored. So I don't think we're tied to just this location, but the concept that having a green space that is structured for special events would be an advantage to downtown. We may have to adjust the concept, we may have to look at different locations, but what we're promoting at this time is the concept, not necessarily this specific project. And of course, this one, if the Burline's 2 buildings are renovated, then that particular area would not accommodate this project. So, but again, the concept, and of course the theater, have outdoor movie screen, maybe even the small splash pad area. We'd like for it to be used more than special events. When people shopping downtown, they go down there to eat, let their kids play, those kind of things, get some relief from the heat. Second thing we would like to look at in the future is a second stage over by the bowling alley, down from City Hall on 2nd Street. If you have events in town, you could have 2 stages going at the same time, and you could have people walking back and forth from the east side to west side of downtown, and introducing them to all the businesses we have downtown. These are just concepts. Probably our #1 industry right now is tourism, and that's historic, cultural, special events, tourism attractions. The Lazy Arena has over 400,000 attendees a year. Red Brick Nights, I think this is a conservative estimate, 25,000 people come to those events. Territorial Christmas, we estimate 20,000. The Land Run celebration, 15,000. Those numbers are probably not exact, but it gives you some idea of the type of things those attract. Territorial Christmas, the Pollard, are all things that bring people to our community. The film industry is a niche market that we are trying to grow. There has been a lot of movies in the past. I think there's been probably at least 10 movies. I've been here 29 months. Can you believe that? 29 months. That's like 10 years in another job. In July, filming the Southland, they needed 300 youngsters. They even promoted it on Channel 9 and some other TV stations. We talked to some of the businesses, and they've had their best business that day for a Monday that they've ever had. So movies are a good thing. We have another movie. Most of the movies made in our community are made for, they used to use the term made for TV, Hallmark Channel, Lifetime Channel. The major motion pictures, we get those every once in a while, like Rayman, but a lot of ours are more geared towards Hallmark, Lifetime, but they still spend money. And I think we have another movie probably coming in November. Where's Justin? Shake your head, yes.
Yes. I'll take your notes from what you're saying.
Make it happen, Justin. Make it happen. And the film that will be coming here in November is a repeat customer. This will be, this individual was the director of a film done here last year, and now he is the producer of this film. So we have repeats. They don't come once. When they come here and shoot a movie, they like the environment, they like all of the different facilities and buildings we have and the different scenes they can shoot. Our town has been film friendly, so they like to come back. The music industry, we will be having a presentation at a future council meeting, but we're doing a tiny town concert at Hoboken and trying to build that up. When major artists come to Oklahoma City to perform, maybe they come up to Hoboken during their time off to do a music event at Hoboken. That's popular enough now, I understand. What radio station? The KOSU? They've got enough play and enough, they're trying to market that to a sponsor so that it would create a revenue source to help support it. And then we're doing a library hours music where we're doing a vinyl of about 9 songs of local artists that we will sell and put that money back into promoting arts. And Justin will, when that's wrapped up, when do you predict that the vinyl will come out?
Mid-September.
So October, we'll probably do a more detailed report on some of the things we're doing in the music industry. Tourism, recruitment, more traditional revenue, and of course the biggest source for us is the Red River States Conference and deal making. Used to be in November, now it's in January in Fort Worth, and that's where most of the retail developers and a lot of retail stores go, and you can make contact with a lot of them at the same time. We tried to do a 2-page marketing piece, which is kind of like our 90-second elevator speech. We tried to get all the information that we can go over with a developer or a retailer on that 2-page sheet so they can see the information that's critical to them to make a quick decision. Are they interested in looking further or not on that data sheet? Themes or hurdles that we have to overcome. Our trade area within 50 miles, there's 155,000 people, but they can't get past the first number. Our population is 11,000. Edmond is 91,000. Median household income on top of our population, Edmond's median household income is $72,000. Ours is 40. Poverty level, Guthrie's is 21%, Edmond's 10. These stores know that we'll drive to Edmond. We've done it for years. If you're going to make an investment in a store and you can go to a town that has a 91,000 population and a high average household income with more disposable income, and you know Guthrie's going to drive down there, where are you going to put your store? So there's a lot of hurdles for us to overcome to try to attract some of the retail stores. Hobby Lobby or Crest, Aldi's. Those are probably 3 stores in Edmond that we probably lose more potential sales tax dollars to than anything else. And we try everything we can. I got the guy that sits behind Mr. Green in church trying to talk him into putting a Hobby Lobby here. So if we hear of a contact, we try to use it. High school friends and professionals that know the owner of Crest. And so we try to use anything we can, but so far to date, we just don't fit their model. But we will keep after it. Finally, industrial development. We have an 80-acre, I call it a pasture, you all call it an industrial park. And I just put there an 80-acre pasture an industrial park does not make. First, you got to decide, is it an industrial park or a sports complex? Can't be both. Or I guess we could make it both, but it's not going to be much of an industrial park if you make it a sports complex. One, or two, are we willing to invest to make it shovel-ready? Shovel-ready means we got to know it's truly for sale. We've got to know what the established terms and conditions are. You know, I can't have an industry come to town and say, well, how much is this per acre? I'll get back to you in 3 or 4 weeks. Well, they already went somewhere else. You got to have water, sewer, electric, natural gas on the site, and you got to have it in the capacity you need for the industry. You got to do your due diligence, make sure you have a phase 1 environmental assessment, deal with any of the site issues on the site. I would point out that if we do the 80 acres, we will not have rail service. And if we invest the roughly 1.4 million to make this 80 acres shovel ready, it will not give us a guaranteed success. There are other factors involved. The existing industry, it's been a while since I've done a study. I'm getting a little older and my memory's not as good as it used to be, but roughly 65% of the businesses that are looking to relocate or expand first look at existing buildings because, one, they're cheaper, just like buying a used car, and number two, they can get in and get into operation quicker. Well, that's 65% of the potential industrial prospects that you don't see until the second round. And a lot of times they may go to a town and look at an existing building. That may not be the building they operate or use, but they like the town and end up going there and build their own building. Number two, incentives. There are a lot of towns in Oklahoma that have a war chest of incentives to provide to recruit. We are very limited as far as what we can provide as incentives. And then secondly, workforce, size of the labor pool. You know, if I'm an industry and I can go somewhere where I've got 7 applicants for every job, or I can go to a town where I might have 2 applicants for every job. Well, which town am I going to go to? I'm going to go to the town that there's a bigger labor pool where I got 7 applicants or 10 applicants. And then finally, skilled workforce, you know, college towns and others that have certain skill sets you compete against as well. So I just don't want everybody to think that we do a shovel-ready industrial site, it's an automatic win. There's still some other factors involved there, and it's going to be a competitive environment. That is my first presentation, and open it up for discussion and comments.
Well, I'll just say that I think excellent presentation. The first part of the presentation obviously identifies challenges that we have in basic services and the cost of providing those services. And the second part of the presentation is the real optimistic. Here's things that we have that are potentially really great to build on our community. So I think I think it was a good presentation. Right? Good summary.
I'd like to echo the mayor in saying it looks like our biggest opportunities and challenges really are in public works. So what we can do to focus on trying to ensure we take care of that would be, I think, in the advantage of our community for sure.
If no more, we'll go to our next one, and is it loaded, ready to go? Opportunities and challenges. Nope, that's the same presentation. That's the same one. Yeah. That's it. I know it'd be difficult to read these on the screen, but everybody should have one of these in front. This is one of the critical exercises we'll go through today. We could have paid a firm to do this. They wanted around $10,000, willing to negotiate some, but we decided we'd try to do it in-house to save money. Hopefully we've done a fair job at it. What I have done on the right-hand side, and these, we divided it into critical issues that need to be addressed, and then a second group of future opportunities. And on the critical issues, we did the ranking of the department heads, and then the city council ranking separate, and then a combined one. And this chart shows the department head ranking and the city council, and to the side I show the council ranking compared to the department heads, and then on the other one I do the same thing so that hopefully you don't have to flip back and forth a lot. To me, when I looked at this, there was a pretty good similarity between the staff's thoughts and the city council rankings on critical issues. The ones that are in kind of the yellow, this color, are in the top 15 of the rankings of department heads that are in the top 10 of the city council. And the blue ones that are, these are in the top 10 of the department heads, but they are also in the top, at least the top 15 of the city council. So a lot of agreement. There's three that were pretty different. On the staff side, they ranked the future replacement of a pumper truck as a number 10, and it wasn't even rated by the city council. I would point out fire trucks normally have about a 20-year life cycle. You run into a situation where it still may be in pretty decent shape, but you can't find replacement parts. A lot of manufacturers only make replacement parts for a given number of years, and then you have to go to graveyards or scrap yards and pull parts off. And then when you get around 20, 25 years, you have to actually have parts manufactured or tooled. So there is a life cycle for fire trucks, and we will be having in the next 10 years at least one of our fire trucks that will probably come to what should be the end of its life cycle. So it's something that bears further discussion. Also, municipal service, equipment, buildings, and office improvements was in the top 15. It was 13 for staff, not rated by city council. And then walkability, bikeability was 15 by staff and not rated by city council. I would point out that when we flip to opportunities, some of the things that are on this list is also on that list, and some people perceive things more as an opportunity than a critical issue. So some of these will show up again and be ranked a little bit different. And then the next page shows how the combined rating is. So the first column, it shows the staff ranking of the combined scores, shows the city council ranking, and then the combined score. I think we can do it two ways. We can stop here and identify from this list of critical issues what we want to put, what the city council, and hopefully staff input's important to you, but staff realizes the city council, the governing body, is the policymaker, sets the goals. So we appreciate the fact that we get to participate and you listen to our input, but it comes down to the city council from a policy-making board. What is our priorities for the next 12 to 24 months? We can go over the critical issues and both the opportunities and then start a discussion, or we can stop here and discuss these and then and one thing I would point out, in your packet, I did put the citizen survey at the end if you want to pull it off of your packet so that you can compare. I just wanted to, street improvements, of course, received the highest ranking in the citizen survey. Business recruitment, which I think of as economic development, as we talked, sometimes community development leads to economic development, so I think those kind of roll together. Youth activities was third. Not sure we clearly defined what youth activities are, and wastewater treatment, water sewer improvements was, wastewater sewer improvements was number 4. And then number 5 was fire emergency medical services, law enforcement 6. And just on the list, I just thought this might be a good reference. Mayor, do you all want to talk about the critical issues, or you want me to go over both and then come back?
Let's do critical issues. I think, well, from a personal perspective, as I saw the topic of critical issues, it was just things that were more urgent versus the other listing was more future. The opportunities, we talked about the opportunities. And obviously we've got to get past the critical issues first, so I think that's the higher priority. So let's focus in on these this ranking here, have that discussion now. And I'll start that off. One of the other things that I looked at in looking at, in addition to those areas that were differential from staff rating and council rating, was the frequency. I looked at the frequency. In other words, how many people voted for something that was in the top 10 or top 15. And a couple things jumped up in my mind. Not real significant, but on the combined, the comprehensive plan, there were, ended up as being 8, with I think 6 votes from the 6 total votes on the combined, and yet the Highland Park upgrade received 10 votes, or I'm sorry, 8 votes. There's 8 people that voted for it in the top 10, versus the comprehensive plan, there were 8 people that voted for it in their top 10. I think, I know the score doesn't, the score doesn't reflect the frequency, but I looked at the number of votes. One person could score a particular topic or project as a 10, for instance, and it tends to sway the overall score. So I looked at that too, and there were a couple. Well, as I say, that was one that kind of jumped out. That had the total score was higher for the comprehensive plan, and yet more people voted for the Highland Park upgrade in their top 10.
So,
just to start the conversation.
So a question might be on some of these things with regards to frequency and weight and that sort of thing, that even though a lot of people might have indicated that it was in their top 10, it might not be a have to have. And some of these things, I'm looking at them and it sounds like, and having read some of the comments, that they are have to haves, even though they fall a little lower. And just an example, and I'm not saying anything about this particular item, but when I was reading about the pumper truck and then the ISO rating, that's one of those things that really didn't land in the top 10, except for department heads, but it's not in the combined, and it's not in the council top 10. But I mean, what is the penalty if you don't have that? It looks like there's some insurance consequences or whatever. So just kind of thinking about what you're saying, Mayor, that the Highland, the park upgrades, is that a have to have? Even though a lot of people agree that that's important. Comprehensive plan, for example, the master plan probably is more of a have to have. So I'm just kind of throwing that out when you're looking at this and trying to decide which list you're using and what kind of weighting. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just thought that was worth bearing in mind.
And the mayor and I had a discussion on frequency versus the total score. And he said, well, what if you have a bunch of 4s and the 10 outweighs them, but there's less 10s? And I told the mayor, well, if you thought it was important, don't put it down as a 4, put it down as a 10. So I would like to point out that on our list, there were some things that were more administrative in nature, and those will probably happen anyway if they don't even make the top 10, because they're not requiring a substantial amount of money. They're requiring staff time. So some things will go on whether they make this top 10 list or not. The other thing is on the city council number 13, ODOT sidewalk on Division of Walmart. ODOT's already committed to fund that and do that project because they have to do that to do some improvements to the division. So that's going to be an ODOT project. I don't know if we've received timing on it. So if you make that the top 10, that's going to be an easy win for the old city manager because he doesn't even have to do it.
With regards to, and I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but just to kind of help me, one of the things that we're going to talk about is budgeting for these items. So I'm guessing, or I guess the question is, do we have a feel for roughly what each of these items are going to cost? And so as we go forward with planning, will we know what our threshold is? Like, when have we run out of money? Can we afford to do all these things? Or are there going to be budgetary concerns? Like, this might be number 8, but by the time we get to number 8, there's no money for it, so we have to move it around on the list.
You know, one of the things we could do also is if you clearly look at let's look at the council rating, the bridge removal on Harrison Street, number 1 by the city council, number 3 by staff. Number 2 on council, shovel-ready industrial park was also a number 2. I think those are easy things to say quickly. Those ought to be in our top 10 priority list if you want to start replacing and go from there.
Well, if you put a couple of them in place, then it's easier to work through the others, I think. And those two things also fit right into like the top 3 on the people's list of things they wanted, because to me, the Harrison Street project is streets. I mean, yeah, it's a big hole, but it's still street improvements. People can use it again. And the utilities out there to the complex, to me, that goes in with economic development, industrial development, trying to bring things into the city. And since both sides are pretty much the same on that, I think we should put those two kind of in place and work from there, is my opinion.
And I say just something that's just kind of going in my brain here that I feel sometimes that we get ahead of ourselves by prioritizing things when we're doing strategic planning, and that's where we jump right straight into this top 10 thing. And you kind of mentioned it, that goes under economic development. We don't have these overarching goals that says we need to do something in economic development within the next 2 years. We need to do something with our streets within the next 2 years. We need to have those goals set, and then you can plug those things into those goals for strategic planning and hit those things, and you can probably get more than 10 done if you do it right and approach it properly. I just feel like we're missing out on a step here. We don't have the goals and the vision outlined before we start picking out what we're going to do.
Well, you're right, and these are, some of these are more action items that would maybe plug into an overarching goal or plan.
So we skipped the goals, so we went right
Skip
straight to
the
the
planning or the action items, yeah, so, that's a good point. Do we want to, so we can do it one of two ways, or we can do it one of three ways. We can take a step back and do a broader view and say, what are the 4, 6 concepts that we feel like are important for further development, and then start to plug these in under those areas. Or we can separate out the ones that we feel like are most obvious, and then kind of do it backwards and go, okay, then we're going to group these under this, we're going to group these under this. And the benefit of doing it the second way might be that we can sort of see a natural pattern. Like, look, we've identified 3 things from this list that all fall under this category. So obviously, this is something that everybody feels is important. And then write the plan or the goals and then bullet the action items under them.
So a question I would have, back in 16 when we did the citizen survey, unless we disagree or we're going to maybe enhance it or change it, did the citizen survey set those goals?
That's what I was using for my reference. Since we're here representing the people, and the people gave us this list, and they approved the money, or they approved the issue, and they would like to get some of these out of it, I was trying to stick to that list and more use that for prioritizing what the people wanted, because, I mean, they approved the first one, but if we don't deliver, if we get out in left field somewhere, there's never going to be another one.
That's the important part right there.
Right, exactly. So that's what I was using for my goals.
And that was one of my questions, is how has the citizen survey play into the results? It seems like probably a little bit differently for everyone. I think once you're finished with this process, it's helpful to create a document that you can deliver to the citizens so that they can see, and then you identify in some way on that document where their input affected what ended up being the plan. It is really important that they see that be real evident and very easy for them to tell. At the same time, it does get tricky because a lot of times citizen surveys, they don't have the big picture. You know, they know that there's a huge pothole in front of their house and they are really tired of it, but they may not necessarily understand all the different things that come into play, or something like a shovel-ready industrial park, that thinking about infrastructure and what it takes to get that, but that's not necessarily part of their everyday reality of what's right in front of them. So, but your point is a very good one, that we have to be able to show the citizens how we're using their input to.
Yeah, I think if you look at, for instance, the first 6 things that are on the combined rating, it basically fits into the first 2 categories. So, well, first 4 categories, if you will. It's basically economic development and infrastructure. And certainly street improvements is infrastructure, wastewater is infrastructure, and business recruiting is economic development. So it seems to me that we are in sync with what that citizen survey. And I may point out, I think this is a wonderful tool, but we also have to remember it's 800 responses and 12,000 population. It's relatively, somewhat in some instances, nebulous topics on the left-hand side. People interpret youth activities different ways, or business recruitment in different ways. And again, I think it's a wonderful tool, but I don't know that it's necessarily the Bible. And there's some things, if we were to do it today, we would change some of those things. We would probably put more definition on the topics and hopefully get more clarification. But having said that, I think our 6 combined mirror 3 of the 4 top topics that the citizens gave us in 2016.
So what if we go ahead and we'll kind of work either from the council list or from the combined list, whatever you guys decide is most appropriate, and then when we break for lunch, I can kind of take a look at it and maybe get some input from some of you all on which ones of these hit, so that we'll know if we're on track and at least somewhat aligned with what the citizens want. And then I do think it is important that we kind of group these and look and see where the overall goals or what the strategy is. What are we, so that it, like Z said, instead of having just a list of action items, we can
I
say.
think the goals are really important to help us to figure out what we're trying to do. Because when we say economic development, I can also point to streets. That plays a role in economic development, that our downtown streets look right. We had this discussion at the street committee the other night. But we may put it in a pigeonhole of infrastructure and not really give it the weight it needs for another bigger goal of economic development. So I think when you have the goals that are overarching and you can put these things under them properly, they get the proper emphasis that they need.
So let's just do this real quick, and this is not something that you're gonna be tied to or married to, because we're not gonna really give it the attention that it would deserve if you were doing this, I guess, in a more long-term way. But just real quick, if you were gonna say, our strategic plan, what are the areas, so not the action items, but what are the areas that we think need attention, and not just that there's something wrong with them, not that they're broken or critical, but what are our goals for the city?
Personally, I would say number 1 is to provide a quality infrastructure for the citizens of Guthrie.
Okay. What else?
Well, there's no way we can do all this with the money we've got, so we're going to have to assure that the voters are going to approve an additional bond when this one's over.
So,
We got to give them what they want.
Development, whether it be economic or industrial, because it's all business. It all ties together.
so do we think that an industrial fit with economic, if we say economic development, agree that industrial?
I believe it does in my mind.
Okay.
Say industrial/economic development. Economic development, period.
Okay, what else?
I mean, I think that honestly, the item number 3 on the citizen survey is youth activities or just quality of life, really.
Quality of life.
And one thing I was going to ask, and this might fall under quality of life, but I was looking at some of the police and fire things and some of the ADA things, and so I'm thinking that maybe it's kind of safety, but maybe safety is part of quality of life.
Sure.
That'd be infrastructure.
Okay, what else?
I mean, infrastructure could be a part of quality of life too. I mean, it obviously plays into it.
The water, the
Clearly.
wastewater.
Absolutely.
And it also builds into economic development as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I mean, the thing I'm looking at is investment in our community. We've talked about economic development downtown, and we've talked about the industrial development out north of town, all that kind of stuff. But downtown, who the hell is going to want to move in there? The streets are falling apart, the buildings are falling apart. We haven't done a thing in 100 years on those streets downtown. So if we start infrastructure there, we're also building on economic development for downtown and giving an incentive to people to invest in our community.
That's true.
And I don't see this anywhere standalone, so I think I know the answer to this, but I'll just ask it anyway. Is revitalization of downtown, is that something that is an area of interest? It impacts a lot of things, but economic development, quality of life.
Economic development.
It's a major subset of
It's,
it.
it's the biggest part of it, yeah.
And that is somewhat a part of the opportunity list. That was listed under the opportunity. That was listed under the opportunity, not necessarily under the got to do it now.
Okay, good point. Yeah, because that's a
Because it allows us to replace everything that's under the bricks is why it works into a critical issue to me.
So let's look back at the citizen survey results, and if you look at their top 15 things, do they all fall under one of these, or is there something that they've stated loud and clear that's important that's not addressed anywhere here?
Under the citizens? Is that what you're saying?
I think all of those things honestly will fit under quality of life, infrastructure, or economic development. I don't think there's any of those things. Any of the citizens' top 15 items I don't think would not fit into one of those categories.
And I was kind of impressed, I've said this before, that was a want list for everybody, but when you're looking at the top, say, half of the list, the citizens are more interested in infrastructure, water lines, streets, that kind of thing. You would kind of expect maybe everybody wants a swimming pool in their backyard, or everybody wants a movie theater or whatever, but the citizens, I think, did pretty good as far as addressing important things. I think they did pretty good at choosing between a need and a want. It's okay to want, but you have to take care of the needs or the have-tos first. And I think in their survey, they addressed it pretty good.
Which makes your life so much easier because you don't have to try to sell them on a water treatment facility that nobody wants that's really expensive. At least they understand. Yeah. And it speaks to the communication that's come out of City Hall that the citizens, or at least these 891 citizens, understand some of the challenges that you guys are facing. So let's kind of, I'm going to remove this page and put it off to the side up here somewhere where we can see it. And as we move through these other things, make sure that they fall under one of these, or if they don't, do we need to add another area of emphasis? We can call that around.
Visibility.
Pardon me?
How about visibility?
Visibility, okay. Tell me more.
By that, what I mean is the things that we do, they really need to be very visible things for the public to see if we want them to approve money going forward. That's why to me, I'll harp on this all day, but the downtown area, when we do that, that's going to be seen by everybody. People that visit, people that live here, everybody's going to see that, and it's going to improve all the infrastructure downtown, which is right in the middle of our infrastructure, for that matter, and it hadn't been touched in hundreds of years, or in 100 years. So, but it's very visible. Roads are very visible. Those are things that people all over town see. They're going to notice that. They might not go to the park, but they will be driving down the roads.
And that's it.
That's what I mean by visibility.
That when
Might not drive downtown.
this is complete,
They might not drive
then
down.
I think you should have a deliverable. Where are my marketing people? Do we have anybody from marketing or anything like that in here? Something a nice full color piece that can be in the library, it can be at City Hall, depending on how much you want to invest in it. You might do it as a direct mailer to your residents that says, we met, here's what we took the results of your survey, here's what we've identified as the drivers for our actions for the next 2 years, so that they can see it. I do know Edmond, one of their part of their plan, it's not one of their goals, it's not on the strategic plan, but it's one of their general council policies is to, when it's time, to take the steps and the actions necessary to encourage the passing of the sales tax when they vote on it. which goes back to, we have to make sure that our citizens know how we're spending their money.
Couldn't we utilize the Chamber of Commerce to help
Absolutely,
facilitate? I mean, they would be
yes,
the best
yes.
cheerleader for that.
Yes, great idea, yeah.
I have a question. I don't want to make it more complicated, but when we talk about downtown development, talk about recruiting businesses downtown. One, if you look at the streetscape project, how many years have we been trying to do that street improvement? And doing improvements downtown is very challenging in the historic landmark district, what you can and can't do. And then secondly, a lot of the buildings, or all the buildings, are privately owned. And so what are we going to do to encourage them to improve? I mean, when you get into code enforcement, then you get into individual property rights. So when we talk about downtown development and downtown recruitment, what are we talking about? You know, a lot of towns I've seen do retail business incubators to encourage small retail businesses to get started, like the Mother Road Market in Tulsa. It was done by a foundation rather than the city, but it's a place where people can go and relatively cheap start a retail business or a restaurant in a friendly environment, very cost effective, and then hopefully they grow out of that into a building somewhere. But when you look at our retail business incubator, it got very little support. So what tools do we see that we have in our quiver to do downtown development, business recruiting downtown?
Well, we talked about this at the street committee the other night. If you were to redo a lot of the brick streets that we have, just make them fresh. I mean, they have not been done in how long? 100 years? That's what he said. And if we went to that trouble to do that, it would make the town look so much fresher, but it would still have the old feel to it, and it would go a long way toward making someone that's coming into town looking at that empty building say, yeah, they're doing some things in this town to be alive.
So what would a block of brick street redoing one of those cost?
No.
I think we could spend our whole budget.
Yeah.
I think too, if we utilize our tools of our Historic Preservation Commission, as well as our code enforcement, to ensure that our building owners are keeping their facades fresh, painted, windows not falling out. And we've had a lot of that here lately, within the last 12 months, of just some bad deterioration and some safety hazards. And I think if we utilized HP and code enforcement to ensure that they weren't deteriorating on the exterior, that too would help attract people to these buildings, just to know that if they're going to, whether they're going to purchase a building or if they're going to lease a space, that the building owners are doing some type of minimum maintenance and they're not buying a money pit or leasing something that the building owner is not maintaining. Yes.
But all of these points are good ones that when we sit down and make the goals, they have to be realistic. Like, do we have control over it? And so, do you want to put downtown revitalization somewhere in print when in reality you can't fix that? So, things to think about.
Well, the buildings are privately owned. Our only in through that is our relationship with the chamber to influence the owners through that, unless we had some sort of code that said we're going to tax you if you don't have your building occupied, and I don't know that we want to go there.
Well, I don't know that we necessarily have to go to a taxing. I go back and forth on that myself. I mean, we hate to see empty buildings, and so you think, I know there are other communities that do a vacancy tax. Is that really, that's not building owner friendly, but is that business friendly? And you can argue both sides. I can sit on both sides of that myself.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Yeah.
But I do think that our code enforcement has the ability to ensure minimum maintenance standards, just from nothing else, just from a safety standpoint, from some of these second-story windows that we've seen fall out, luckily in the middle of the night or whatever, and no one got hurt. So from just some minimum, we've got to have some minimum safety or
But are
facade.
we just going to look at the exterior? I mean, when you talk about maintaining a building, if you don't maintain the entire envelope like roofs, and you got water leaks that then lead to electrical problems, and you got electrical wiring that hasn't been updated since 1940 in some of those buildings. I mean, some of it requires access to inside the building on some of the minimum codes, and that's when you get into property right issues and then safety for a community. I mean, if there's electrical problems, I mean, one fire could destroy several buildings downtown.
And I think that you're right, and I think we've got to take this into steps. I mean, I'm not for necessarily the city trying to come in and inspect everything at once, but I think that we could take advantage of that as a building is to maybe transfer ownership. Maybe that's part of the process before it can transfer ownership. There has to be a new permit or something pulled with the city for the sale to ensure that electrical is safe or what have you.
I'm sorry.
No, I just think that we could probably interfere in or intervene in small steps and trying to get those things rectified, because obviously we don't want an electrical fire that takes out a whole city block.
There is a permit named for what you're talking about. I think it's ready to occupy or something like that. I forget what it's called.
Occupancy permit.
Occupancy permit that, you know, that if you're selling it, you have to sell it with an occupancy permit.
So I feel like we're getting a little bogged down in this one issue, but what I'm hearing is, it is important. So it may end up being a separate issue, a separate item, but instead of saying the goal is revitalization of the downtown area, that's a longer term goal, that's a 2 to 5 year goal, and the short term, less than 2 year goal is identify some steps or some studies or whatever that need to be done, identify the priorities as part of the downtown area, identify whether or not it's feasible to redo the brick roads. So we may, as we go through the day, decide that that's its own thing, but I'm a little worried we're getting too hung up on downtown.
I see all that fitting into number 4 in our combined rating.
And remind me which one is number?
Economic development, downtown business recruitment. The staff voted it as number 4, the council voted it as number 5. There's symmetry there. Now, there's not specifics, but I see that fitting into that prioritization. In fact, you know, I think
the prioritization is still good, but what I've been saying is we don't have the goals.
I understand what you're saying. You want to go back and set goals.
We haven't set any goals. I mean, if you're not setting the vision, you're not doing your job. I mean, prioritization is we got to go goals.
We've set goals for the last 3 years in this retreat.
Well, we haven't. When's the last time we looked at our vision and mission statement?
I look at it fairly frequently.
Well, as I'm saying, I'm listening to what's saying, and that's not inconsistent with our vision or mission statement, but that is really where we start. So again, we kind of get ahead of ourselves sometimes when we try to just pick this project or that project, and we want to fund this, we want to fund that. We really need to lay down some things that may not cost us any money, like let's make the ordinance that makes this work.
Well, that's what I
It may take some time to do that, and then we can fund something that goes with it.
Sometimes the goal is identify these steps to this and such and this and such, and we commit to in the next 2 years we'll identify the
That's
steps.
why I'm saying we don't do a very good job of planning because we leave the steps out.
Well, okay, so I think, again, let's put this over here. Can everyone see it? I know this road's gonna have to turn around, but economic development might be too broad. You know, we might have to say either we separate out infrastructure and downtown, and then economic development, other or whatever. We may decide that's too broad, but let's continue with working through this list, just identifying whatever we decide if they're the top 10, and making sure that they plug in here, and then these will be our drivers, but this will be what we use to kind of put together a plan. How do y'all feel about that?
Okay.
Or at least attempting that. Let's see how that works.
Well, again, if I go back to the combined rating, it looks to me like the top 5 things have good good buy-in by both the council and the staff.
They're looking at it.
And it fits into 3 of the top 4 things that the citizens identified in 16.
Okay, so the wastewater treatment plant, industrial park, bridge removal, downtown, and water tower
Water treatment.
maintenance. Okay,
And then the 6th one, there seems to be, staff identified as higher. 11 staff people identified it as in their top group, and 3 council. Only 3 council. There's a little bit of, or it's 11th, I'm sorry, 11th on the staff and 3rd on the council. Council identified it as a much higher need than the staff did.
so keeping that in mind, and especially the way the city manager kicked off this discussion, knowing that council, you all are the ones that have to answer to the citizens, so do you feel like you want to bump that one up a little bit?
I think that we've got it right because of the vision we have, and again, the streets are important, they're a visibility thing that Jim's talking about. And it's just important that we get close. We can't have another Harrison Bridge falling apart over on Commerce, which is probably next, right?
On college.
I guess, Z, if we look at our council rank and the city rank, everything falls into play until we really get to that bridge maintenance. Because the staff ranked at 11, we ranked at 3. I guess if we were to want to bump that up in the thing, I mean, we obviously ranked 3, but water tower maintenance, I mean, I think that's important, and the staff did too. What would we just move that? I think, obviously, the bridge removal, Harrison Street Bridge needs to be done, but I think you could almost combine those 2, right? Bridge removal and the street maintenance and bridge because it's street overlay and bridge maintenance, and then we have also exerted Harrison Street as a specific one item. I think we could probably agree that not only do we need to remove Harrison Street, but we also need to do some bridge maintenance. So we could probably put those 2 items together and not disagree, I don't think.
And then we have to lay out steps for them, and say,
Yes.
we're gonna do Harrison, then we're gonna do
And then,
College.
yes.
If that bridge is falling apart, it's going down the same road that Harrison did with the ratings.
I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten on the Pine Street
Yeah.
issue with school starting. I mean, yes.
Same here, Doug.
It's got to be done by then.
So I think,
So we've got.
we could
Harrison
combine
Street
those 2.
And the street overlay?
Yeah,
I
the
think,
Harrison Street and then the bridge overlay, or street overlay and bridge maintenance as one item.
Yeah, I think, James, my interpretation anyway of number 6 of the street and bridge overlay is that it was more development of every year we're going to have a certain fund for that.
Sure.
And that's, you know, and while the Harrison Street thing is a one-time deal. That was the differential, but I agree with you. It's certainly both about streets, certainly about maintenance, certainly something we got to do.
A lot of those things
Both of
are
them.
one time, but even the streets, we had 145 miles of streets, and we're doing less than a mile a year. That is not a good plan.
No, I would agree.
And we need to pick up the pace on that drastically to just keep up, but we're not going to keep up. If we continue at pace,
We're not gonna catch up.
anything on streets for about 2 years.
Let's keep up.
We should have money laid back for that, because they've been identified, so we need to pick up the pace and do some major roads overlays and things that we need to catch up on. We're behind.
I would agree.
So just a summary of the last few minutes of discussion. Are we pretty good down to number 6 in the combined? Because obviously one of the next questions we're going to be dealing with is, okay, these are the things that we'd like to do. How much money we got to do it with?
Yeah. I think we're good at down to 6.
Ask about number 8 on the combined rank, the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, it was much higher on the councils than it was on the staff score.
That's not so much money as it is energy, right? It's a lot of energy.
A lot of it is money, because at the staff level, we don't have the capacity to do a comprehensive plan. So it is as much a financial issue as it is a, staff.
I believe that thing's 15 years old roughly, and
It's going on 20 years with no major
Oh, down
updates.
below?
Most comp plans you have for a 20 to 30 year period with 5 to 10 year major updates.
and I think it cost about $100,000.
Yes, you-
when they did it.
Yeah, and nowadays you could still get that. A really good one, you're looking at probably 130,000.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna put that in a parking lot because I appreciate what you're saying, the reality check, it actually will take money and time that maybe we don't have. But that is something that is such a big piece of all of this other, so. It's kind of hard to.
It's pretty much a foundation piece.
Right.
And what we have right now is dated.
Well, I've always argued. I've always argued about that comprehensive plan that is not a plan at all.
It's not a plan.
It's a set of demographics that is really good for us to know. There's no steps in it outlined anywhere. It's not a plan.
No, it's an inventory.
It's an
Yeah.
inventory.
And I would agree that most of the comprehensive plans that you have now have specific goals and then policies beyond that, which then obviously translate into your zoning ordinance or your development code to be implemented in that. So you're right, most the modern day ones have some strong policies and goals.
But there's still a difference between a comprehensive plan and a strategic.
Yes.
Yes, there is. But yes.
Yes. So you may be able to live along without that for a couple more years, but it definitely, if you continue to refine this process, then you might want.
And if it doesn't help, I was looking at even, because at the staff level, I think we can accomplish some updates to it that would be beneficial, which then would kind of be able to move it back a little bit in terms of a large financial investment in that. So that may be something that we look at rather than, trying to upfront it with a bunch of money altogether.
Okay.
Have we picked number one yet?
Too far.
All
I
right.
think has everyone agreed we are 1 through 6?
1 through 6.
Yep.
On the combined rate.
Yep.
All right, is there anything
Yep.
else on that list that absolutely cannot go without attention or help?
How critical is the roof? I mean, the roof's important, but I don't know what shape it's actually in.
Actually,
Yeah.
the roof right now is a 20-year roof. It's been on the building since its construction, so it's about 3 to 4 years past its life expectancy. Right now, when we get roofers to come out, they kind of talk like, well, we can patch it, but it's really just kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a really big issue. So the roof right now had something like, I can't remember, like, there were quite a few, like, double-digit number of leaks throughout the building. So we did get a quote to take a look at what that roof would cost us. And the high quote was about $120,000, but it is something that we need to look at pretty quickly. We've got one area in the building where we literally have a trash bag hanging from the wall to catch all the rainwater that comes anytime that there's rain.
Then I would say that's pretty critical.
I'd say that's
It's
something
pretty
needs to be on
important,
there. Because if you don't fix that, everything underneath it is really, it gets expensive from there.
Right.
It's
Then we're looking
expensive
at
now, but it just
Keep the outside on the
raises.
outside.
Yeah.
controlled and
Can I
electric
ask another question?
I would-
Not about that, but about something else. Are you done with that one? Are you done with it? You got-
I think so, unless anybody else has questions.
I think it'd be important that, just to put out here, I know we're specific on just City Hall roof, but I think there's multiple facilities citywide, that's city facilities. I think Suzette, I receive emails from Suzette on roof leaks probably if not almost every time it rains.
Correct.
Every other time.
Correct.
Our facility has not been addressed since it's been constructed in the 80s. I think we need to maybe view it citywide. There's issues in multiple facilities, just to put it out there. I mean, so it's out that it's
Yeah.
known.
We did on the library, found out it was a different issue though. It was created by
Okay.
the air conditioning unit, not the roof.
Okay.
So you're saying that there's city facilities across town that are having roof issues?
It's
Yes,
not like our 100-year-old water lines.
it's just a larger issue than just one specific facility. I think it's important to be known.
Where did the city roof fall in our listing?
Infrastructure.
It didn't, I don't think it even appeared in the council. Did we get one vote?
14.
And so
So the roof is 14, city?
Yeah. By our city council.
this
Well,
raises
combined,
a
$9
question,
Sorry.
though kind of going back to what Z was saying about it being a planning process. And so that's something absolutely that has to be addressed, but is it part of a strategic plan that you want to put forth to your residents that says, here's how we're bettering our community, or is this part of the cost of doing business? It needs to be accounted for in terms of how you're going to pay for it and when you're going to do it.
We seem to be reactive all the time. We don't have a plan that says these are 20-year, 30-year roofs, and we should be putting money back for 20, 30 years so that when it hits, we're ready to go. We don't have that. The same thing, I was getting ready to ask about the vehicle fleet rotation, whether you're talking about municipal vehicles or the police. We don't have a plan that says we have X number of vehicles, they last X number of miles, X number of years. We have to replace them. We should be replacing a few every year, not having a crisis every 5, 6 years, whatever, and doing that. We have to have a plan and have money going aside. Like you said, it's cost of doing business, so you gotta put it back every year for that and spend it every year. That's kind of the way I think it should be.
And I agree with you, Z, and I think we could look at this year, and we know that we're gonna have a surplus of 300,000. Well, we could utilize part of that 300,000 to put a new roof on, rather than just trying to absorb it in the next year's budget, as we're trying to grow the budget when sales tax is coming down.
But what have you done to get us further down the road so that 30 years from now, we're looking at where are we going to get the money to pay for this roof again? We need a plan that says we need to put money back for a roof. We need money to put back for fleet.
I think option around.
Yeah, I think that's where the expectation needs to be from all the department heads, that we need to not budget out every single dollar and increase the budget when sales tax are coming backwards, because then that always puts us in a reactive state. So if we try to plan and we don't budget more than what is coming in, we can be more proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah,
We'll never be in a position to have those kind of funds and those kind of plans as long as it's in a lot of people's heads that I got 50,000 last year, I need 55 this year. I mean, 5% is what we were talking the other night. So if you got a $100 item, you can't tell me you can't get by with $95. I mean, that's for all the department heads. And as long as you keep hogging it up and we're trying to stay ahead of the money burning machine, you're never going to be able to have these kind of reserves or these kind of plans. It's just going to be a rob Peter to pay Paul. The 300,000 that James was talking about, for rolling over from one to the other, if everybody didn't have 17% gains or 8% gains or whatever they bumped their budget up to, that money could go towards something else. But right now, you know, Leroy says even moving that and over, we're still 25,000 short on what you guys want. Everybody's going to have to suck it up and get more real if we're ever going to have a plan like this and be able to do these kind of proactive things.
I think.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a budget for the
Right.
roof, the pumper truck, those kinds of things. And so there is not one in place, is that correct?
Right.
Well, that's not, we have been putting money aside for wastewater treatment, for instance.
Yes.
Now, part of our challenge is that the can's been kicked for a number of years down to us. And it's just been since the sales tax, actually, that we've had, it's nobody's fault. We didn't have any money. The city didn't have any money to do some of these things. We're playing catch up. We're playing catch up on replacing vehicles, on fire equipment, on infrastructure. I mean, our top items are infrastructure, mostly. So we can't forget about, okay, we need to take care of this crisis that's been building up for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But we also need to put into place how do we make sure that the people that follow us in council aren't faced with that same problem 10 years from now, as you well stated.
I don't want to leave
So
a
we
mess
need to
for
keep
people
that
behind
balance. We need to keep that balance. But what's been driving us, and what's driving the critical issues, is what hasn't been done for 20 or 30 years, not being critical because they didn't have money. Now we have a little money. We need to do that, but we also need to put into place a process where, in fact, we do have a plan for replacing water lines and sewer lines and vehicles and roofs.
I think it's important that we as a council just maintain the priorities, knowing that we have a roof on City Hall that needs to be replaced, and also within the last year we did a remodel inside City Hall, and maybe we should have redid the roof before we did the remodel. I just think we got to make sure we keep our priorities straight, even within each council, each year.
Well, and that same reasoning kind of goes over onto the fire department deal when we got all the new vehicles and everything, but we didn't have any place to store them. And so now they're asking us to build a place to store their vehicles. It's the same kind of reverse methodology.
But another question or another concern that I have, we have those vehicles, we're storing them over there where you can't get to them short of going over, unlocking, getting all that stuff out, so they don't ever use them on a daily basis. Do we really need all of them? I mean, yeah, we need them, if we just need them to sit in the armory where we can't get to them. I mean, you know, I have things in the safe that I don't use every day, but I keep them over there, so do I really need them? No, I can answer for mine. I probably don't need them, but I want them and I have them.
So that may kind of fall again under the city resources, so inventory, planning for replacement, all that kind of stuff. And I put that as one of the goals. I don't know, we'll come back to it, it's up to you all whether or not it's a goal, but I think it needs to be on there somewhere because there are so many things that fall in there. That needs to, again, it'll be like you said, just keep putting off until all of a sudden you can't go without the roof and there's been no plan for it. So let's do this. Let's.
Could I respond to things? You know, we talked about we're spending $300,000 less than our revenue this year, so there is $300,000 from the fund. A lot of that $300,000 come from positions that were vacant all year. The new budget includes filling those positions. So it's not just adding to people's budget that made us roll that 300 in. It's actually budgeting for things that we did without last year. Those, like Tenny, got 10 empty positions. Well, that's what helped create that $300,000. If we budget for all those positions next year, because we do think we need them, then it's going to be difficult to say we're going to save that $300,000 again, because we'll have to pay to fill those positions. And then you have to deal with things like our insurance went up 13.5%. That's $100,000 more than what we paid last year. So I'm not being argumentative, but there's a lot of twists and turns you got to figure out as you do that.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Some of those, we don't have any control over our
Correct.
insurance other than do we want this much or this much. We
Correct.
can't do that. But looking through the line items, and we're not here to get into line items.
I understand.
I know there's other things that we probably can shave down here and there, and it's not gonna make a hill of beans difference other than somebody wanting a bigger budget.
All right, what do you guys think about, we've identified 3 or 4, depending on how you split up economic development, a handful of items that might be used to build a strategic plan. And then we've identified some action items that will plug in under each of those, that will plug in somewhere. What do you think about looking at the opportunities and itemizing those, and then taking the combined list of critical and opportunities and plugging them in under each one of these larger goals and kind of seeing where they overlap, and then work on milestones, deadlines, budgets, that kind of thing. Since there is some redundancy, and we may be able to combine some things. The mayor is frowning. So is that a no? We'd rather do
Opportunities, you mean, so switching to the next listing? Is that what you're talking, when you're saying opportunities, okay?
And it's just a suggestion because there was some overlap.
I didn't realize I was frowning.
Maybe you were just thinking. But because there is some overlap, and if we, again, are going to take our list of things that have been identified and set milestones and budgets and stuff, we may be doing the work twice, or we may be setting milestones on something that actually has a overlapping or closely tied opportunity, that those could kind of dovetail. If that makes any sense? Are we?
I'm not following. Our critical items are things that we've identified that we need to do fairly quickly, or try to do fairly quickly. And then the second list is a little bit more strategic in that it's future. And there are some things that are on both lists, but not a lot. I guess I'm not quite understanding how you see combining those two things will help us.
Well, and I don't know that they will. It was just kind of a thought. Like I said, if everything under critical and opportunities ultimately should find a home under some broader umbrella, then we can have both lists and then plug them in where they go and say, okay, the goal is to provide a sound infrastructure, and then say our steps are, we need to do this and this, and then whatever the opportunities are, and outline those things, and they'll all be part of infrastructure.
I think if you think you've been herding cats to this point, if you go to that, you're gonna have a bunch more cats jump out.
Okay.
I think we need to go with the critical list and make a plan. This is our critical things. This is what we want to fix, or what we want to tell staff to do, so that they walk out of here knowing what they're going to do. And we don't put it on that list unless it fits under those things that we've identified.
Okay.
Because if we go to mixing everything else in, we're just going to keep
gonna
running
be
around the
confusing.
bush, because we can come up with more topics than you want to hear about.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's start with, do we want to just move down? We decided 1 through 6 on the combined issues are the critical ones, right? Everyone's in agreement on that?
So far, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So we were going to identify budgets and funding sources, milestones, target dates, and then responsible parties for each of those. So are you all comfortable with just starting with number 1, wastewater treatment plant, and moving down to 6 like that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And we will have goals. I know this is,
Well, I was just saying, my thought is we're starting on the action items, and we don't have any goals.
I thought the goal was to pick something under infrastructure,
Well,
economic
you haven't
development.
articulated the goal. What does infrastructure mean? I mean, you need a kind of a sentence with a verb in it that says, we want to do this with infrastructure.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's what I'm saying.
For your, just let me read what our goals were last year,
Okay.
okay? Just, you don't write it down. First goal, and they aren't in necessarily priority order, they were just listed. Goal number 1, maintain an infrastructure that minimizes disruption of quality service to all citizens and provides for future expansion of city services to accommodate projected need. Goal 2, operate with financial efficiency and integrity and enhance trust in city government. Goal 3, create and sustain a diversity of recreational, educational, and cultural opportunities that enrich the lives of our citizens and visitors. 4, revitalize neighborhoods and focus on the aesthetic values of the community. And each one of these had probably between 5 to 10 bullet items underneath them. 6, create and enhance the value of local economy through progressive business development initiatives. 7, create and sustain a comprehensive ongoing capital improvement program. That's what I say we're probably focusing on right now. And last one, enhance the understanding of and participation in city government by citizens. That's the goals that we had last year. Goals don't automatically change. I mean, it isn't something that's put on the shelf and never brought back
That's the first time we've articulated them today, and that's from last year. And that's the first time we've actually articulated any goals, and we need to start there.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but
I don't have that.
Huh?
I don't have that.
We all have that. No, I think it was in our, wasn't it in our orientation, not orientation thing? Maybe it wasn't. I thought it was. Now, I'm not saying that this shouldn't be tweaked. It should be tweaked.
Sounds pretty good.
It should be tweaked every year.
It sounds pretty good, but
it is very good.
But we haven't done that.
We all did it.
No, we all didn't do it. I can name probably 3 people that didn't do that last year.
Well, it was done at last year's retreat. Okay.
And depending on what council thinks, a lot of that language can probably be boilerplated or reused. And when I am talking about these goals, that's the kind of verbiage that I was referring to. So yes, the infrastructure in itself is not a goal. It needs to be explained, needs to be fleshed out a little bit, kind of to the degree that those were. And then in order to drive those goals or help achieve those goals, we'll have our action items, which will say, this will be done in order to, and I have it in here somewhere too, to maintain an adequate infrastructure to ensure, et cetera. So,
I'm just going to ask the mayor if you would just reread that goal in regards to infrastructure, because I don't know why we couldn't boilerplate that and move forward.
Maintain an infrastructure that minimizes disruption of quality services to all citizens and provides for the future expansion of city services to accommodate projected needs. And there are 11 bullet items under that.
Those 11 bullet items, I'm assuming, are action items that...
More, yeah.
But I think what you just stated is, I mean, in my mind, would be a goal for infrastructure. I mean, Z, are you in agreement?
Those sounded really good, but we need to start with those.
Yeah, I was going to say, does those apply to what we're looking at right here?
yes.
I think so.
If they do, then I think we're going in the right direction, because we've got goals and we're going that way. And I think that's what Z's trying to say. If we got goals, we know if we get there, because we have goals. We don't know otherwise, and so you just hopscotch around and you react and fix things instead of having them fixed originally. you know? We didn't meet that goal, so now we got to back up and put a Band-Aid on it.
Okay, let me get a little bit deeper in this then. I'll just read the bullet items that were under it, okay? And you see if it fits with what we're talking about. Because most of this that we're talking about is infrastructure. Engineering and architectural design for the replacement of a wastewater treatment plant. 2, review and update the existing analysis of road conditions within the city, prioritizing repair and replacement based upon the condition and use. 3, prioritize city and roads and establish a plan to repair, resurface X number of miles of roads each year. 4, update and the improvement plan and identify funding sources for paving access to Liberty Lake. 5, review and update the existing analysis of water and sewer lines to establish a priority for replacement lines in concert with long-term plans. 6, replace X number of miles of water line each year. 7, evaluate water pressure to all sectors of the city to ensure acceptable capacity for normal use. 8, establish a plan to enhance the water towers throughout the city to meet current standards. 9, finalize the process of determining the use and plan of all city-owned buildings. 10, maximize the source capacity of Guthrie Control water resources. And approve the implementation of a low water dam, which was done. 11, evaluate the effectiveness of the emergency auto alert system throughout the community.
And is that a one-year plan? Do you have a time frame on there?
They are.
I was on council in 2009, and a lot of that sounds like stuff we put on there way back when. We haven't made any progress on a lot of that stuff, really, because we do it and we lay it out here like this, and then we go about doing these projects, and we don't look back at how are we doing on that plan to get infrastructure mapped out over time. We've never asked that question in the last 10 years.
I think we've made a lot of progress.
Well, I know we have made a lot of progress, but I mean, those sound like the same things we've been saying for 10 years.
Yeah. So you think some of them shouldn't be on there?
No, they got to be on there, but they have to be followed up more than once a year.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why we haven't got more of them accomplished, because we didn't know about them all, you know?
I think that's kind of what the city manager and staff is saying, that it would be helpful for them to have the action items, the timeframes, the targets. 11 may be too many, 11 items. What, is that, when you say that's your goal list, is that a one-year plan, a 5-year plan?
I think in our dialogue, we were kind of focusing on a 5+ year plan. I mean, we don't have the money to probably do the top 3 things here.
So, and that's why I go back to, there probably needs to be a short-term, less than 2-year, a long-term, 3 to 5 year kind of thing. And I keep saying areas of emphasis because they're too vague right now to be goals, but it is kind of the same thing when I say infrastructure, economic development, quality of life. All of those are the things that you want to focus on, and then each of these items that we identify will fall somewhere under there, and then the verbiage does need to be fleshed out so that the goal is in infrastructure. That doesn't mean enough. It's not specific enough. And then the action items or the critical issues and opportunities, whatever you want to call them, are manageable, and then there's real specific action items underneath them. And something like the replacement of certain vehicles or something that may fall under more of a 2 to 5 year plan. So.
Well, I want us to feel good when we walk out here that we're doing something,
right.
But I actually want us to do something after we walk out here. And that's what my point is. We've done some of these things for a number of years, and we're still talking about a fleet rotation plan that we have never come up with. We're still talking about a plan to do be able to redo all the streets in town and to redo our infrastructure all over town. We don't have a plan. We still don't.
And you know, we can develop all the fancy plans we want to do. And we're going to replace every police department vehicle over, we're going to do 3 a year because we got 30. We're going to do all the fleet vehicles and public maintenance. We're going to have a rotation cycle. And You know, if your plan is to spend $100,000 and you got 50 cents in the bank account, you can have all the fancy plans you have. We got X amount of money. How are we going to best use that X amount of money to move the community forward? That's what I want to hear. I don't care how fancy a plan we have. We got limited resources. How can we best use that to move this community forward to make it a better community than it was last year?
So maybe it's just gonna have to be fewer things, fewer items. It's gonna have to be whittled down a little bit, and
I think it's gonna have to be within
left
the,
off, but
I was gonna say, I think it's gonna have to be a give and take within the departments themselves. I mean, if we focus this year and we did something for the fire, we focus next year, we did something for police, we focus the next year on something for public works, or, I mean, we can't give to, most of the items that I think that we're discussing are all in public works, and we have not made public works a focus like we need to. And I think we've got to make Tenny's department a priority. And I just think it's always kind of gotten what's left over. And I think we've got to make them a priority. And I think that the department heads as a whole, everybody needs to say, you know what? Tenny's department's a priority. I mean, I think that everybody feels like their department is necessary, and they all are. But at some point, he's got to have his time to be a priority, that we can fix these things.
so is that in terms, infrastructure, public works things, or maintenance, fleet maintenance, that kind of thing? Or are you suggesting maybe public works needs to be addressed as a separate?
I mean, I think public works needs to be probably addressed as, I mean, all those things are obviously public works. So if we can prioritize under public works, yes, what those things are. I mean, I know that we want a new pumper truck or what have you, and I am not against that. But we also know we just bought a new ladder truck. And so do we need the pumper truck? Yes, I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying, you know what, we got to the ladder truck. If you'll just give us another couple of years, you can come back around and be a priority for this pumper truck. But right now, we got to focus on something in the police department or something in public works. And I think right now, we've got to focus on public works.
And this planning, I think this planning for city resources. Some of that is going to fall under there in terms of what are we buying, what are we fixing. But on the flip side, everybody's looked at this and thought about it and voted on it. So is public works specifically as an item on there? No, there's a lot of things that fall under public works, but we don't want to reinvent the wheel right now, do we?
Yeah, I think that, James, I think that the staff is seeing the same thing. I mean, look at their ranking of the public
Sure.
works. I mean, I think we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
We all see in those first 6 items, which happen to mostly fall under the umbrella of public works, we all see that as a priority for our community, whether it's the council or whether it's the staff. I see a good symmetry there, and I think everybody recognizes that's a critical item that needs to be funded. I think we're to the point. I don't know where the money falls here. I have no idea. For instance, what we're talking about the cost of items 1 through 6.
Yeah, so we need to get to that. Zee, do you feel any better about the goal situation, understanding that these things will be...
They need to be articulated properly, not
Yes.
just, need to have a verb with it. And then I think my big concern is that we do this today and we walk away and we don't do it. I want it done. And we don't follow up on it to see where are we in these milestones, that we don't do a good job of that. We do this once a year, and I've not seen this set of goals from last year, but they do sound familiar from about 2009. So.
Well, I think, and it sounds like the good news is everybody's in agreement, making the list a little bit more manageable. Everyone agrees there are more wants than resources. So every year. You know, hopefully you'll be able to check a lot of the things off with a more manageable list, and next year come in and do some new things. And
Well, we need to be realistic when we when we
Yep.
articulate these steps and put the date on it, that this is gonna be due, and maybe put some steps in between that will get us partially there with some dates on those, to get us partially, you know, if we need to do this by this date, you know, such as write an ordinance for whatever we need to do to get us moved forward. We need to do our part, everybody in the departments need to do their part, but we need to all be moving in the same direction on all of these things. And all of those things need to have a date and maybe an owner who's
yes,
pushing
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So-
and that's part of what we're doing actually right now with this. So,
And I would agree, and I think that's what Leroy is looking from us, is the overall plan, so that then they can go through
Yep.
and figure out how they're gonna execute it. And I think that what we could ask for, so that we're not just visiting once a year, is maybe Leroy updates us once quarterly through his manager's report on how we're coming on our plan. I think that would probably be nice to be able to, so that we would know, this quarter we did this, or what have you.
and a formalized mid-year checkpoint can be a really good thing too. You know, just an hour or two sitting around going, all right, where are we with this? And if we've gotten derailed on this, then why, or whatever. So, okay, so let's work on this, and I think some of it will fall into place. So, starting with the wastewater treatment plant. Let's talk a little bit about what's our budget? Do we know what our budget is overall? How much money we have to address
Bill, what's the amount?
items 1 through 6?
Just say a lot.
14 million? 14 million?
14 or 15, I can't remember last one we did.
Okay.
Is that, Bill, is that the beginning, or is that after we scaled it way down? That was after?
That's after some scaling, yeah.
Yes.
That's the budget for this item
Yes.
specifically?
Yes.
Okay, do we know overall for items 1 through 6, how much money do we have to spend to accomplish these 6 things?
We can give a rough estimate. The wastewater treatment plant, 14 to 15 million.
Okay?
Industrial park, to get the utilities out there, we're probably looking at between 1 to 1.5 million. And these numbers will get refined, but
Okay?
the bridge, I don't remember that estimate.
I don't either. Is it?
I think we've scaled it down to about 4 to 5. Is that correct, Bill? It's
Well-
4 to 500,000, I believe, because we've scaled it way back. I mean,
We got a couple options that we're going to present to council, but $500,000 to $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay?
Water tower maintenance, there's 3 different levels that we looked at, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. The annual street light overlay, we were trying to do about $300,000 a year. The reason we haven't done anything the last couple of years is we've been trying to build up money to address the Harrison Street Bridge. It'll come out of that $300,000 a year.
And will you tell me again on the water tower?
I'm not sure. I would have to go back through my notes. I don't have that.
And then for number 4, that's kind of nebulous. Is there a dollar figure attached to that necessarily?
The downtown business recruitment, economic
I
development.
don't even know what that looks like
Okay.
at this point. I mean, you know, normally communities, where do you go find a downtown business? I mean, 1 or 2 people open the shop. How do you recruit that?
Right now, it's at the marijuana outlet or something.
We get more of those. Normally, communities try to attract larger mid-size or box stores in retail developments for specific reasons. 1, the amount of sales tax they generate. Number 2, you're looking at things that are going to bring more people to town, and you're increasing the size of the pie. If you bring a 3-person retail store to downtown, you're not increasing the size of the pie. A lot of times you're dividing the pie into smaller slices. So when you talk about downtown development, some of the towns, and what they've done is they have retail incubators, like I talked earlier about the Mother Road Market on 66 in Tulsa. And Oklahoma City's doing a similar one where, you know, if you got somebody that wants to start a retail or a restaurant, you know, a lot of them start out in food trucks and grow into, but an environment where they can come in, get their business started, work the kinks out of their business model, and then move on. But we didn't rate the incubator for retail very high on our list. So I'm not sure at this point, I'm not against it, I'm just saying, I'm not sure what that looks like. And somebody might have a better picture for me.
I think a lot of these items are subsets under the bigger items. And I think all of them are important. It's just when you rank this, you can say economic development is important, but that's bigger picture than the incubator piece. So when I say economic development, it's like the sports and youth programs and things that the citizens rated it. It's a little bit ambiguous as to what we're rating when we look at that stuff. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and this is subjective to, I mean, it's hard to assign a dollar amount to that. So we'll kind of not worry about that right now.
Number one, $14.5 million. We're saying we'll take $4 million out of our CIP sales tax.
Okay.
At least $10 million. Okay, when we looked at a bond issue to pay the difference, we did not have a cash flow to make the bond payments.
Okay.
So the first proposal we got was pay interest only for like 8 years. And that's one thing, because you can compare, if it costs $14 million a day and you're going to pay interest only for 5 years, that interest is going to cost you X. And inflation is going to cost you X. Is it better to wait or not? But if you can't even make the damn payment, you can't issue a bond. And that's where we were a year and a half ago. Since then, we have reduced the amount of money being transferred from the Public Works Authority to the general fund. We started weaning, and that's part of it. I mean, we could have, if we continued, like we did $350,000 we transferred from Public Works Authority. Well, if we transferred that $350,000 this year like was done in the past, you wouldn't even know that we needed more money. But we were robbing Public Works to make the general fund budget work. But we're weaning ourselves from that. I think we're down to 175. So we went from 350 to 175. We're putting that money in a separate account identified for a wastewater treatment plant. We're putting a $4 million each year, a share of that each year into that fund. We're getting the Public Works Authority in a position to make, where they have the cash flow and to make the annual payment. But you got to get there where you can make the payment on the loan before you can borrow the money to do the project. So it's a little more complicated than saying, yeah, we want to do it, it costs this. You got to have the revenue stream figured out on how you're going to make the payments.
So if you continue with what you were saying about moving some of the Public Works Authority money over, can you estimate a time by which you'll have enough money over?
We'll look at it again this year. I think we're getting closer, and we'll have about $3 million set aside towards the project, isn't it, after this next year?
Maybe half of that.
Okay. Say $2 million. But I think our revenue stream's gonna be such that we can actually have a committed revenue to make the bond payment.
Okay? By this,
Hopefully this year.
okay,
Then we have another obstacle. You can only borrow $8 million in 1 year. It's a $14 million project. So even if we decide we're going to do it this year, we'll have to do it this fall because we're going to have to borrow $8 million out of this budget year and then borrow the rest of it out of next budget year because for some smart reason, we cap public works that you can only do $8 million a year.
That's our law.
Yeah,
How old is it?
older than me. I don't know.
Do we need to update our law?
Well, I think it is set by charter.
so this is something, so
Maybe outdated.
Yeah.
the budget and funding sources have been identified. A little bit of it is just
Yeah.
a matter of waiting.
Yeah.
And so possibly my next year, let's just
Yeah.
say FY '21, you should be,
But maybe staff hasn't done a good job reporting. We talk about this once a year, where we're at. We've had some workshops on it. Maybe we every quarter, every 6 months, we need to remind everybody, but, you know, we were told that that was a priority and we're trying to position ourselves to get there.
okay. So in terms of, so I was just wanting to look at the money here for a minute and just
Yes.
make sure that everybody knew what these things were gonna cost. So in terms of the funding source has been identified, a little bit of it is just gonna have to then wait until it all kind of falls into place. And milestones, really, the biggest milestone is just gonna be once you can pull the trigger on the loan. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Number 3, we plan to go out for bids for that in November
Okay,
and have it ready to start when football season's over.
okay. All right, I'm gonna start going back to these one through. I just didn't know if these were all coming out of the same funding source. That's what I was trying to identify. If you
Yes.
said, we've got $20 million and what's the total here? But it sounds like they're different revenue sources.
There is.
So we don't have to worry that they're all coming out of the same account and is there enough in that account?
Correct.
Okay, okay. So,
Can I ask real quick on the water treatment plant? If we were to bond, how long is that borrow term? Would we take to pay that back?
Was it 25 years, Kim?
I'm sorry, wastewater, yes.
There's a limit.
25 years, I think.
Are we limited by charter or by,
Oh, the amount?
I mean, the term? I mean, do you
No,
think-
the term's not limited. It's the amount you borrow that's
Yeah,
limited.
the CWSRF is 30, we do 30 year on that.
Yeah, I think it was a 25-year bond issue.
I think that's what they were looking at.
Yeah.
So we have to go to 30.
But the longer you stretch it out, the more interest you'll pay.
So that,
But I think it was 25. I'd have to go look.
And we were looking at borrowing.
We will probably have a workshop on the wastewater treatment plant between now and December to update everybody where we're at on financing it, how it looks as far as, is it better to go ahead and do it and pay interest only until we get the water plant paid off, and then we'll make principal and interest, because inflation, you have to compare inflation versus paying interest. And
Sure.
we'll have that, and then we'll show the revenue stream to make the payments, and we'll have it all on a spreadsheet where the payments are coming from. We plan to have that workshop so we can show if we're in a position to move forward with that project, probably sometime between now and the holidays. On number 2, the industrial park, I don't know if we got the 1.5 million sitting in the bank today, but on the 1.5 million, what we can do is we can use our what I call rainy day fund, you all call stabilization fund, and borrow from it and pay ourselves a higher interest rate when we put it back, and that will cost us less than borrowing it from the bank. And we can move forward with that project. That project could happen in the next budget year. The bridge should happen in January. Downtown
so in
economic.
terms of, there's not any like steps or anything that needs to be identified, this is all,
We will do more detailed steps than that, but I'm just kind of giving end dates.
okay.
On number 4, that's gonna take a little study because I don't have a vision of what that's telling me to do yet. Number 5, we're gonna roll that in probably if we do financing, to look at doing financing for the water towers, and we're gonna come to you with 3 plans. How long a life do we want to extend? Do we want to just Band-Aid them? Do we want to have, a 5-year life, or do we want to go 30? So we've got some different plans that we're going to bring to you on how much do we want to invest in the water towers right now. The overlay, whatever we pay for the bridge, we'll have left over, and then we can go back into the annual overlay program.
That's 2 separate. Right?
It came out of the same money, though. The overlay and the bridge are out of the same pocket.
Okay, right.
So those 2 will have to work together. Now, we went ahead and used some money for overlay because we skipped a year and we thought we ought to do at least some overlay because we think our citizens expect that. But the cost of doing the bridge will impact how much overlay we can do next summer.
But both of those items are coming out of sales tax, CIP.
There's 2 sources. One, 200,000 out of CIP, and 100,000 of it goes to ADA improvements, 100,000 to street overlay, and then there's a fee that you pay on your utility bill for streets, and that generates about 245,000 if I remember right. 235, that's close. So that's where that money, it's about $400,000 a year. We take 100,000 that we're targeting towards ADA improvements to address some of our non-compliant issues there.
So in terms of timeline, do you feel like on all of these, is it reasonable to say they'd be completed by FY21? Or are we identifying that the funds will be in place by a certain date? What do you feel like is
The wastewater treatment plant, the plan ought to be in place, but I don't know that we'll be able to implement number 1 until
So plan in
the
place
next
by,
budget year, probably.
plan in place
The
by,
industrial park should happen this next budget year, which for us starts on October 1, ends September 30th next year.
Okay.
So the 20 budget.
20.
The wastewater treatment plant could be either budget year 21 or 22.
Number 1.
That's number 1 on your list. You got GPWA, I'm assuming that is the
Yeah.
wastewater treatment
Yeah,
plant.
right.
The bridge should happen in the FY20 budget year. Water towers, either 20 or 21. And the overlay would be annually. And again, number 4, I need to get my arms around that one.
Yes, yeah, there's a lot that needs, that will.
And I think on number 4, with James being a small retailer, he could help us maybe flush that one out.
Okay.
Because you got more experience dealing with small retail than I do.
Okay.
So the other thing that we talked about, had any dialogue about, was the comprehensive plan. And the council feels much more strongly about that than the staff does. That was 200,000?
Yeah, I mean, probably at the high end. You probably around 150 to 200, yeah.
Is that one that the council wants to add to our list? No. And the funding?
I don't think so.
Where would the funding come from that? That's not
I
CIP.
think I would be pretty satisfied if he could update some of that data in there as a listing for us to refer to. It's old data, and we need to update what's there, and I think he can do that without spending a lot of money, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, 'cause that's-
Or something to show.
Right, because that's what I indicated, because even just the future land use map, as well as some of the other stuff in there, we could do a update, and that would, I think, be able to make that document kind of relevant, valid for another couple of years, or 4 years or so, or even a 5-year period, to where we could kind of shift that down the road a little bit more.
When it was done, it was a good plan.
Yeah.
And it's still relevant to date, a lot of pieces of it. I think what we would concentrate on is some things in our building design standards. I think that needs more attention than anything, because we ran into a lot of unintended consequences from the design standards that were adopted a few years ago that we need to clean up, just like the accessory buildings. Fence is another big thing. What building materials you have to use. So I think we can concentrate on that. I think that we can make the current comprehensive plan work for us. I think the themes 1 through 6 are more important than doing a whole new comp plan, but address some things like the design standards.
Well, again, I think the misnomer is it isn't a plan. It's really more of an inventory, as I keep reading it. And it's pretty good inventory.
It's good information.
When it was done, it was really pretty thorough.
It's really good information. But it's not-
So I'm not knocking that. So how does that get updated with a contractor, or?
Well, no, I mean, with the updates, honestly, that's probably something that I would be able to accomplish.
Be careful.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that obviously it would probably take a little bit longer, than if you have an outside consultant do it, because obviously I have other things I do on a regular basis, but it's not something that I couldn't otherwise tackle. I already have a kind of a plan and putting together a plan and process to do an update to our zoning ordinance, much like Leroy had talked about with, building design standards. That in itself is even more outdated than the comp plan. So I would agree, like Leroy said, that's probably our more critical area, because that's really what we're looking at when businesses come in, whether it's the downtown or other areas, the specific zoning that's in place, not so much that, or in requirements, not so much what the comp plan has. So I think even on a business recruitment end of things, that's a more critical issue to probably address, which again, I feel very confident we can do in-house.
Wow.
And those are some steps we should be identifying here to put down in the plan. We need to do this, we need to update the zoning, we need to update all those things you're talking about by a certain date. And then
Yeah, and with the next year, I think it's not out of realm to have a, I don't want to necessarily say complete, but a substantial dent into that area.
Into the area of updating it?
Updating, especially on the zoning code end of things.
Portions of it.
Yeah.
And we can identify
Yeah.
those portions, and
Yeah.
that will come more with the administrative
Yep.
goals of the departments, which is
Exactly.
normally set by administration, not city council.
Mhm.
Did the city hall roof make number 7? We talked about it quite a bit.
I'm going to go back real quick. So does council feel satisfied on that, because you brought that up specifically as an item of comprehensive plan, that Dan will do updates on certain portions of it over the next year? And then when I put together my report, I'll be sure to include that as something that maybe in a 2 to 5 year time frame needs to really be taking a look at if you want to hire a consultant and redo it or whatever.
You good with that?
So we don't.
Shaking heads.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. You were what? Where were you? Number?
The roof replacement, city hall, I thought it got moved up to 7 or somewhere on that list.
We didn't
I don't see
formally move
those
it up,
charts.
We
but
didn't, no, we didn't.
Do we have any
insurance claim that we can file on that? Is there any monies there available?
I don't think just an old roof.
Okay, I mean, I didn't know if we,
Wait for the next hailstorm.
I'll tell you, we've had some because there's lots of homes that's gotten them here lately, so I didn't know if we had anything that we could
Could
do with that.
be like my house I had when I was in Kansas. It was 3 stories tall and it sat on a hill, and the adjuster come and he was kind of nervous because it was so high. He said only half the roof qualifies, and you had to go out on this fire escape, and there wasn't any way down except come back through the house. And I handed him a ball peen hammer and shut the door, and I said, let me know when you want to come back through, when you determine the whole roof needs done.
He asked a good question there about the insurance, and the other issue is the bridge on Pine. That's a FEMA thing, so that's a separate money issue. It's not, we haven't identified it as a specific thing, but it is a specific issue that we need to be addressing, and it comes with, it's already paid for, I guess, or will be paid for with FEMA money, so we need to make sure that that's
70%.
Oh, what? 70%?
70%?
75.
75. We still need to make that a pretty good priority we didn't identify it though.
I don't know, so I'll be honest, maybe I didn't listen or didn't hear something, but so the bridge on Pine, I've told people that it's priority, that the city's taking a look at it, but we've got it, it's gonna be paid 70% with FEMA money, and it's on the list, so.
That's an ongoing project.
Okay.
So I don't know if you need to put it on future, it's an ongoing project.
Yeah, that's more of a operate day.
What we're doing now is we're doing a drainage study to make sure that when we make the repairs, we address the water flow from that watershed and don't put it back in a way that we don't. So we're doing the watershed study first, then we'll come back with what repairs need to be done and put it out for bids. We'll have to pay for it and then wait to get reimbursed. It sometimes can be several months before you get reimbursed. But it is an ongoing project.
So what did we decide about the roof? Look at it next year?
I don't know that that's a can we should kick. I don't, how many buckets did you say we have? We got trash bags?
There's one part of the roof that the leak is, it's like a shaft down to that part that kind of collects water, so there's literally a trash bag hanging from the roof. There's double-digit leaks throughout the building. Like, I think it's over 20. I don't know.
It's not just City Hall, it's other buildings like 10.
It is other buildings too. The one that we identified on this list was specifically for City Hall, but there are, like Tim mentioned, a lot of other facilities that need work.
But we got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, blue tarps aren't that expensive.
So do we have any idea?
Blue.
Yeah, so the high cost on the roof for City Hall only is
Just a minute. High cost?
High cost quote, the one quote that, or we got 2 quotes, the higher one of the 2 for City Hall only was $120,000.
How much was the low one?
Not much less than that, like 170, I think 175.
So is that one that the council wants to move up into the top 10? Listening.
It needs to be.
It's a pretty immediate.
One famous councilman said, if you want to have a party but you got a leak in the roof, you got to fix the leak in the roof.
Or you can have the party.
Or you can outside. Yeah, have a party outside.
I'm hearing that we'd like to move it up.
Okay. I'll add that.
So where's that funding come from?
Good question.
The roof.
Europe.
Well, there's only one part of money.
So it's CIP.
Y'all keep asking that, but there's only one
Well, we
part
keep
of money.
hoping that there's another side.
At least when it rains, right?
So that's
Everything
CIP.
for the rainy day part.
Here we go. taking a collection.
Everybody pitch in. That's the other fun we got.
That's all you got?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So does it, where does it come from?
Well, it comes from the CIP, I think.
That's the only source of funds we have.
The sales tax.
Yeah. All right. Everyone's in agreement on that? Okay. All right, and when I put together my report, I am going to include something that just about the discussion about the ongoing maintenance and that kind of thing, that there needs to be some kind of a plan to go for that for the immediate future we can.
With a $12 million budget, you're talking about that's 1% for you guys that were saying CIP, but I mean, in the overall budget, it isn't outrageous to me to be budgeted in the budget somewhere.
All right, let's talk about opportunities.
Oops, I went past opportunities. Opportunities, okay, I got to turn back on. There was more difference between city staff and city council's views on what would be opportunities to move our community forward. For example, the outdoor event center in downtown was number 2 from the department head or staff's thought process, and it was number 21 by city council. The spec building was number 7 to have. It's kind of like you have a shoe store, but you don't have any shoes to sell. Well, staff thought having a spec building might be something to explore. City council, it was a 22. Walkability, bikeability was an 8 by staff, a 16 by city council. But it also falls under quality of life and some of those kind of things. And then the retail restaurant incubator was a number 11 by staff, wasn't even rated, didn't get any points from the council. Lake improvements and amenities out there was a 12 by staff, 23 by council. And theater was a 13 by staff, so it was pretty down the list by everybody, and it was 29 by council. So there's quite a difference between the priorities of staff versus council when it comes to opportunities. And of course, we all know pretty quickly who wins in that discussion, and rightly so. I mean, the city council is the one that sets these kind of policy goals and stuff. We just are thankful that city council allows staff to express opinions and be involved in discussion, but at the end of the day, these are policy questions, and goal setting is a function of the city council. But there is more difference between staff and council on opportunities than there was on the critical issues.
And some of them, you know, the good news is industrial park, we've already talked about. Interesting, so here's comprehensive plan, number 2.
Yes.
Which we just talked about. So that obviously needs to be identified.
I think the sports complex is the first thing on the city council's list, which ended up 5th. I think the first 4 items are kind of already on our list.
Yep.
In the sports complex, we're going to have to decide what that looks like. What's our vision of a sports complex?
Yeah, what is
but staff didn't really want to get too involved in it until we kind of got some guidance from city council. One concept is, of course, a new sports complex that that would set the world on fire and be quite a complex to bring teams in. Some communities use that as economic development. I can remember growing up in Indiana in the 70s and early 80s, Indianapolis decided to become the amateur sports center of the world. And they started building sports facilities, and they truly did become the amateur sports center of the world. Olympic trials, everything's done there. I'm not saying we're going to do that, but it makes a difference on what our end goal is. If our end goal is to make a sports complex that not only serves our local residents, but also is an economic engine that brings sports competitions to town, that's one picture. If it's just to enhance the facilities that we have to primarily serve teams in town, that's a different picture. So, you know, we only have a certain amount of money. If it's to do the sports complex that's more of an attraction economic development piece, we may have to break it up into smaller pieces and do softball first, or do baseball first, or soccer first. And but if we're going to do the lesser piece where it's more to serve our needs and less as a tool to bring teams to town and look at it as both to serve our community as an economic development piece, then that's a different picture, and we would just start improving the various fields. So that's first we need to know what our vision is as far as the sports complex.
So
It would
Sean,
be helpful, sorry.
I was just going to ask from an economic development standpoint, you think about the resources available, is a sports complex going to be a good use of, is it a realistic expectation that if you spend money on a sports complex that it will have a positive impact, and is it relative to the amount that, which we don't really know what it would cost necessarily, but is that then if you say I have X number of economic development dollars where it makes the most sense to funnel them, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the guy over there with the headphones on, I'm surprised he hadn't told the headphones on. He's the chairman of our sports facility committee.
Task force.
Task force.
So, the question being, with regards to a sports complex, and the question is, do you enhance the facilities for use locally, or do you design a complex that's going to be a draw and an economic development driver? And if you are saying we have X amount of dollars and resources for economic development, if they're allocated towards a sports complex, do you expect the return to be relative to the investment?
My overview of the entire deal is we would love for the big picture of a complex that would not only suit our young kids here in town, but also bring in for those tournaments. And when we got the price tag of $14 million, that came pretty tough, because last time we increased the sales tax in Guthrie was in 1979 until the last one. Going back within 6 months, 7 months, could you ask for another increase for that? It'd be tough, I think. Hotel motel tax, to increase that, even if you double it, would be a nice touch on it, but it's not going to build a $14 million sports complex. I don't know if it's really 14, that might be, whether it's 10 or 14 million, I don't know. But do we look at other places as well that we have right now? Is the Owens Park, do you take those softball fields out and build on top of that? One softball field, I would think, equal 3 or 4 t-ball fields. And I bring that option up just because it's less money. 14 million is a lot, especially when you have a $14 million wastewater treatment plant, $1 million bridge, blah, 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 blah. You guys gone over that so far. So realistic, I would love to have the big deal, but is that realistic for now? That's where I'm at. I would love to have the big one on the 80 acres, but is it realistic?
I guess my question would be, how big is that economic pie in Oklahoma, especially central Oklahoma? And what other communities would we be competing with to get that here? And then what's the upkeep of that once it's here, just to keep that machine running to ensure it remains competitive? I mean, I just think, and I'll be honest, I'm not a sports guy, so I don't know, but I'm just sitting here thinking, we're 30 minutes north of softball capital, right, Oklahoma City. Can we physically and really attract that to keep it going if we were to focus on softball? Or what does that how big is that economic pie? And where are we on the bus? Like, are we just too late to the game because too many other communities have identified that as an economic driver for their community? And so now if we just add one more, it's going to be hard to get a piece of that pie.
Well, I can tell you right now, we are the worst in the state. I mean, we are bare bottom. I mean, it's bad. It's really bad.
I'm addressing if we were to go for the big picture, the big complex.
Yeah, there are a lot of, as far as bringing teams in for outside for our youth leagues tournaments, there are tons of teams and tournament teams out there. And so Edmond might have 80 one weekend. Well, we don't need 80, we might need 15. There's plenty of those out there. And I'm in the middle of all this right now because my kid is going, I went to Owasso this year where I spent $12, $8 to get in. My wife spent $8 to get in. And we played at 10 and we don't play till 4. So here we are in Owasso and we went out to eat and then we had all that, we're at the hotel. We had to stay, obviously in Owasso, we had to stay in a hotel. In Chickasha, we went to Chickasha, and it was another $10 each to get in. And they have great facilities, way much bigger than we need. We always look at Chickasha as a sports complex, and I actually got to go walk in there this year. And it's way bigger than what we would ever need here. And what all the teams, softball teams and the baseball teams were asking for is basically take Cottonwood Flats baseball and put them in a nice complex. Take the softball fields that we have now and put them in a complex. We're not looking to add more fields. We're looking at what we have now into a central area, and that would fit our local needs and just big enough to bring in teams. We don't have to have 85 teams come to Guthrie for a big showcase tournament. We can have 5 to 8 tournament teams, just like a lot of people. Alva is a good example out in the middle of nowhere. That helps them because you have to stay the night there. But we don't have to bring the capital of the world, but we like to have a little bit of that because then we can bring the people into Guthrie. They can eat, stay the night, like all tournaments do.
Has there been any kind of feasibility study that tells us what the chances are of money being made on going the big route? Or are you guys just going by your feel, your gut feel, and telling us that this should bring money? We're talking about investing $10 to $15 million, and we did a feasibility study, I guess, for the, what was it?
Wastewater treatment plant.
The water treatment plant, wasn't it? Water treatment plant. We only spent $8 million on that, and we did a feasibility study on that. But do we know what the return on investment is supposed to be? Is there actually a number, or is this we think it's going to be good?
I don't honestly have a return on investment type deal. What I'm thinking is if we build the fields just suitable for our local needs, going from the very worst in the state, and I'm not playing. It is the worst out there. I mean, it's bad. It is very bad. But that would also bring other opportunities. So I don't know the return on investment. I just kind of go what a lot of people, our committee on that, travel with a lot of with their young people. And just my examples of Owasso and Chickasha.
And we don't have a feasibility study or a market study. We do have indicators on what has been generated at other locations by investment in softball, baseball complex. I know one thing surprised me when I was in Cali County at Winfield. They've got a big bluegrass festival, and it's a big event. Brings about 15,000 people to town for their bluegrass festival. It was kind of eye-opening, their softball and baseball complex, because they host state tournaments and then league tournaments. Between the two of them, they also brought 15,000 people to town every year. And, we all were excited about the economic impact of the Bluegrass Festival, but really when it come down to it, the softball baseball fields just had as big an economic impact in Winfield, Kansas, as you got the grandparents and you got the parents, and when they're in a state tournament or a national tournament, if it's a league tournament, it does bring people. So we have anecdotal type evidence, but not a specific feasibility study.
And to add on to that, not even just from the perspective of an economic developer, but from a player myself, I've been to hundreds of these sports complexes that I played at. And every single one that I've seen, they were heavily developed with the sports complex at the center. Shopping centers and restaurants, they want to be next to these complexes, and a lot of the times the motels and hotels in the area are overbooked because of the tournaments that happen around there. I mean, I think even if we chose to start with the sports complex, it will develop outward into Guthrie and the surrounding area.
I just think I would be interested in knowing what that will cost, for what the return on investment would be, and the feasibility of us being able to attract, and how saturated is the market currently, the Oklahoma market, with sports complexes. I mean, can we pack these in like we pack in dispensaries and everybody's fine, or not? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that looks like, and I just know that it seems like we have a lot of nice complexes that I've heard about throughout the state that people already travel to. And so are we going to be fighting to get a piece of that pie, or is there still just plenty of pie to have?
I'm going to sell a performance-enhancing drug next to the place.
James, I think there's still plenty of growth. Obviously, Edmond has a lot of, but when they have, like, example, a T-ball tournament, they have one field. That's all, and so that's, I mean, you can only have so many teams on one weekend on one field.
Sure.
That's just one example there. So there's so many. It's a showcase deal. I mean, high school baseball in the summertime is not a big deal. They're all on these traveling teams. Softball has always been a summer traveling type deal, and so there are plenty. I think there's plenty, and it's just getting more and more and more. And it's not just Edmond. I mean, Elk City, Weatherford, smaller towns than we are, Alva, all have tournaments. It's just and once we get a complex, no matter what it is, I think we will have one hopefully soon. But you plan these out, people plan their tournaments out, and you can go to Edmond, but like to mix in a little bit of different Chickasha, just different places. But the other thing I want to add on top of that is once we do get a complex, just like it is right now, it's up to the Little League Baseball to bring in these tournaments. It's up to the Little League Baseball and softball, whoever it is, to bring in the umpires and to direct it. We just need a boost to get it going. And then once it gets going, it's up to the baseball, up to the softball to get these teams in here to have a good league and then raise their own money. And then you can get fancy with scoreboards. You know, you don't have to build scoreboards at the beginning. Have a goal for the Little League Baseball to have so many tournaments to help bring in money to build scoreboards or whatever extraordinary thing you want to bring in.
Chris, who would market that? How would we market it?
There's just like anything else, word of mouth. You talk to coaches, you go to tournaments, coaches talk to teams in Edmond, you know, all these teams around the state. Hey, we have a tournament, the 89er tournament here in Guthrie, April 15th through the 18th. Will you come down and talk to some coaches? Then you just, there's so many websites out there too. You can recruit, I didn't know this because I'm not that heavy into it, but you can put your kid on a website, say he's 5'5", he throws right, he bats .350, then they click it and they call him and they recruit him. I mean, it's great. It's a different world, but but you can also recruit that way as far as bringing teams, and that's where your director of the league would also get them to come, recruit them to come here.
From a personal perspective, my daughter's a manager of youth soccer at James. And they actually have a matrix where they score different sports complexes in terms of convenience, in terms of access to restaurants, in terms of field condition and so forth. And then she's been keeping this for 4 years. And when they're already scheduling for next year. And so she looks at this matrix and, it determines where they're going to go to bring, I don't know how many kids. She's involved with managing 2 different youth soccer teams, but there's probably 50 kids involved, and then the parents and so forth. So she knows how many hotel rooms are within 10 miles, and I mean, it's all a part, and I think a lot of them do that because they want to have good things for not only their kids, but also the parents and the grandparents. I happen to follow around a little bit, it's pretty significant. And they look at the quality of the fields as well as the area.
So what I'm hearing today is there is interest and support for improving our sports complex situation. Now, the task force needs to come back and look at the two options and come back with some recommendations and to the city council, but whether we do the big picture in segments or improve what we have that's more geared towards serving just our local residents has to be realistic in budget.
And you said there is a task force in place for this?
Correct.
So maybe the goal or the action item is pursue or investigate the development of a sports complex before, and obviously there has been a little bit of that. There's a bid or a cost estimate and that sort of thing, but maybe a little bit more, a feasibility study or a good estimate on the ROI or the saturation and how likely it is that that's going to make money before there's actually, the trigger's actually pulled.
The other thing that might help us later this afternoon after lunch, we're going to talk about how we're going to spend the CIP money, which this all fits into that. Just to give you some idea, roughly the revenue stream each year from CIP with interest is just under 1.3 million. Remember, you all borrowed $3 million to kickstart it when we bought the Tonka toy trucks and police cars. We spent quite a bit of that. That bond payment's $255,000. If we're going to use $4 million of the CIP money for wastewater treatment plant, and when you subtract out what we've already spent on design and stuff, that leaves $260,000 each year for the next 11 years to make up that, to get that $4 million. And then we got a backhoe grader and loader that we lease purchased, or no, it's just lease only, $32,000 a year. And then if you take $100,000 out for street overlay to match with the $200 that we get from the fee on your utility bill, that $200, I'm just talking about the $100 from CIP. And then if we put $100 in American Disability Act improvements, you got $500,000 free money to figure out what you're going to do with. So in 10 years, you got $5 million to spend.
It goes fast, doesn't it?
Yes.
Something Chris might investigate too is if you got any more of those dollars you laid out on the table, that might help that complex.
You know, I've invested in sports complex in town. I think Chris knows that.
And it is, you know, it's ranked.
My money.
It is one of the top ones here, even on the council ranking, and it's the first one, right, that's not already developed. So obviously it deserves some investigation, but does everybody agree then a little bit more?
Yeah.
Task force can look a little bit more closely at what they can expect to make on it with some weigh-in from the economic folks. Okay, what else on this list? Council, if we're looking at the council ranking, the next one is the spillway repairs, ADA sidewalk improvements,
Okay.
35 corridor.
Well, I guess the spillway, I mean, that sounds like that could be a necessity item. I don't know what current state they're in and as far as what we've already maintained or neglected. I guess having a good idea of what we need to do in order to not have that an emergency item and maybe.
The spillway is, it's fair to not fair. And we have an opportunity this year to get a grant from Water Resources Board to help pay for improvements to the spillway, which lake?
Guthrie Lake. It's
Guthrie Lake. So we would like to explore that, to take advantage of that grant opportunity rather than wait and then that grant opportunity not be there. So it's close enough in being a necessity that if there's a grant there, it would make sense to move forward. We're not doing it just because grant money's there, but it is something that needs to be done. We'd like to probably look at pushing it up the list so that we can do it while there's grant money to help pay for it.
I would agree with that. If we can get a grant, is it, I mean, I don't know what type of grant it is. Is it an 80-20, 75-25? But
Matt just, he can speak on it a lot more than probably any of us in the room. He just brought it to us just recently. But again, like our dams, our spillways, our water towers, our bridges, those type items that's inspected annually, and we are directed in directions and they're scored. This is our worst spillway, and they all are big ticket items. So that is kind of where we stand as the importance behind it. If we can get on a plan of some of these big ticket items that we cannot just come up with the funds overnight with, get these kind of scheduled through a plan, because our spillways, as soon as this Guthrie Lake spillway is handled, Santa Fe Lake is right behind it, I would say. The spillway on it. I mean, no different than we've gotten hit with the Harrison Street Bridge. College Bridge is our next, it's on the critical fracture list. I mean, if Matt wants to speak a little bit on the grant and explain it, it's
Timmy, I think you're expensive.
Unfortunately, when it comes to the public works side of it, we have a lot of stuff that's hidden and not seen, and that's a big part of why we, and it's probably a lot of towns that this is this way. I mean, we've got infrastructure as far as storm drain infrastructure. You don't see it every day. Guthrie, unfortunately, has wood infrastructure that's handling our stormwater. We have sewer lines and water lines that's not visible, and they get forgot about. And not just Guthrie. I mean, and then we're all in this position.
What is the percentage of the grant?
The estimate that we worked up, this was just for replacement of the spillway as it is today. The study needs to be done to make sure that, because there was on the east side of Guthrie Lake, there's a newer spillway over there that's in much better condition. The west spillway, which is the principal spillway right now, the water typically goes over, was constructed when the lake was constructed, and the concrete is falling, the retaining walls are just in really bad shape. There's seepage coming up from underneath the spillway, and we looked at just replacement now.
Is that helping me with the percentage of the grant?
$1.6 million construction, it was $1.6 million construction cost estimate with a $1 million grant.
Okay.
So about 1/3 local match to 2/3, so.
Okay, so around 65%. Pardon?
But they're getting more than that. But that's a critical issue, because if I'm rating the priority of something, and all of a sudden the number 9 item has a matching grant that's going to pay for 60% of it or 70% of it, I may move that up to 3 or 4, because if we can get 70% free money, if you will, then we ought to jump at that. How do we put a strategic plan together to take advantage of that? This grant became available when? How did we know about this?
On Friday, July 5th.
When Leroy was on vacation.
Yeah. And I had to write a damn letter on July 5th when I was on vacation to secure the grant for us, to put it on hold.
So the story that he needs to be on vacation more often. No, but how do we strategically place ourselves so we can take advantage of that kind of thing? Because that's significant to have 65% a matching grant, or the FEMA, the Pine Bridge, that's 75%, 70 or 75%. we gotta be able to adjust to that and be able to jump on it when we can. How do we do that, council? I mean,
Call money in the bank.
Yeah.
Reserves.
Not spending every dime we have.
Having some reserves so that when these opportunities come up, you can, you can jump on them. I mean,
And I think that ties back when we, after lunch now, when we talk about studies we want to do, I think it's critical, we talk about having plans for rotation vehicles and stuff. I think it's critical to start with one piece, our Public Works Authority, that should be an enterprise fund, and do a master study for it, to operate it the way it should be, where we have a 30-year replacement cycle for water lines, sewer lines. We're planning to replace our water plant. It's cool. We call it the new plant, but it's not that new anymore. Taking care of all this infrastructure, what does that rate structure need to be? So that we can set the rate structure and the budget so that we have a plan for the future. And so I think when we get to that, there's some studies we need to do to get where we need to go. And we need those to educate the people on why the utility rates need to be X if they want good quality water and sewer services and stormwater service. One thing on the shopping center on I-35, the way we will probably fund that improvement is through sales tax rebate, is if we get a developer to come in to do a shopping center, the utility improvements and site improvements, if we take half of the forecasted sales tax, you can do a rebate or a tip bond with that. You still get half of the new sales tax, but you put half of what you would get back into the project to finance it. That's kind of the vehicle we would do on that. And a project like that, if you got a Buc-ee's or whatever, that would be a landmark growth opportunity for the city from a sales tax standpoint that would grow our economic base from a sales tax standpoint to give the city more revenue. And I'd like to see us spend some time working on that.
So let's back up real quick here on just in terms of the task force is going to work on the sports complex, looking a little bit more at that, and they'll report back when? Within 6 months or something?
Yes.
sounds good.
Okay. And then on the spillway, so did we decide pretty much?
We're in the
Yes.
application process now if the council agrees.
Okay.
Yep. I don't see why we wouldn't.
Okay. And so the next steps on the shopping center.
What we are working, we've identified some property belongs to the community church here in town, and they have an interest in doing a mixed use or mixed development. And so we're working with them. I don't really have a timeline on it yet.
Okay.
And we've talked to a developer out of Dallas that may have some interest.
Okay. So this is a little bit of a longer term goal. Right now, it's just in the investigation
Correct.
research phases. Okay. Okay, what else on this list do you feel needs to be identified as a yes, thumbs up, moving forward?
I've said it before, I think everything on the list is good, but I think it depends on what you're talking about. Something the next year, next 3 to 5 years, next 10 years. I'm
Right.
not sure all of it's applicable this year, but we don't want to lose track of all these things.
Well, I think we've talked, well, I know Leroy has talked many times about what does it take to attract younger generation and the importance of parks and walkways and trailways in that with the millennials. Again, personal thing, I think that the number 7 item on there is a significant one, and one that we've incorporated in some of our plans, like you showed Banner Park with the walking trail around it, but having the connectivity to be able to get from that Banner Park to Mineral Wells, or from Highland Park to Mineral Wells, and other parks, the Lions Park, as well as sports complex. And I think putting together some kind of a plan that develops that has both a walking path, straight line skating, and biking, I think is important. I think that's a critical part for our future.
The only thing I'd point out, number 7 has more to do with the correct existing sidewalks to make them ADA compliant.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I was on the wrong list. I'm sorry.
ADAs.
I know something on this opportunity list, and it's more staff time, but I think it's important to us, number 12 on the council list, an annexation plan. We need to annex some of the growth around us. And that's more admin. There will be some expenditure and legal fees and that kind of stuff, but I know the council rec number 12, but I think that needs to be something. It's not going to be a big investment, it's more staff time, but I think we need an annexation plan.
So that might be less,
It's less capital intensive and more labor intensive.
Let me ask you this, when you talk about the annexation process, I'm assuming we're looking at further south. How does that help improve our numbers when we're looking to market ourselves? I mean, because then we can actually say Guthrie proper has a higher population count. So if we move that forward and try to do some annexation now, that would get our numbers up as far as what our population would be, so that we would look more attractive
Our
to these
average
businesses.
household income would go up.
Yes.
And we could, I mean, I've talked to OnQ, and they're not objectionable to being annexed inside city limits if we can get down there, and that would help from a sales tax standpoint.
Ironically, where OnQ is, there's a catfish restaurant next to it. It's in our city limits. So we are there. So they're willing, it'd be an easy fix.
so I know there'd been a discussion about a staff strategic plan or planning session or whatever, so that sounds like something that ends up.
I'd rather spend more time on things like, rather than the whole comprehensive plan, components of it, the annexation plan, updating our zoning ordinance, look at our building design standards. Those 3 things in the planning department, I think, could pay some dividends.
I agree.
And just to add, even without really talking to Leroy, I put those on as the department's goals for this year, annexation plan, the zoning code and all of that. So we're actually, thinking alike without really even talking about it in that. So that's another thing that's on my goals for this coming year, is an annexation plan.
Okay.
Getting back to my comments, number 7 is the walkability and bikeability.
You looking at the combined list or the city
Combined.
council record?
Combined.
That one up on the screen is just the council ranking.
No, I'm looking at mine on the sheet.
Are you looking at park, walkability, bikeability,
I was
lanes,
looking at
trails?
the combined for the,
Oh, yeah.
We were looking at 2 different ones.
yeah, we're looking at 2 different lists. Sorry.
Which, something to kind of go with this a little bit, I was talking with Dan here, but I believe we do have a kind of master plan that's been recently put together and updated as far as our master trails plan that kind of ties all the parks together and everything, which would be pretty simple, I think, to incorporate into that comprehensive plan. We have that, we just need to spend a little bit more time with it and get it implemented into that comprehensive plan.
Right, and just to add to that, Myers is doing a transition plan for the downtown, which it's more specific to ADA, but it's still looking at areas that need improvement and need to be improved for, again, that overall walkability and that. So again, we do have all of those things where we could include into a more kind of, again, the comp plan or a overall plan. But a lot of those elements are already being worked on.
Okay. I've been told that the food is ready, and nobody wants to stand and the food being delivered. So let's break for lunch right now and enjoy, and we'll be back. Do you need any more work on the opportunities part? Do you think you have enough direction that you're looking for?
If I understand, some of the first 4 on opportunities was already done under critical issues. And so under opportunities, we picked up the sports complex, and we're referring it back to the task force to come up with some recommendations on either a scaled down version in steps or go back to our existing facilities and improve them. The spillway, we're moving forward to get that grant. We'll continue to do this ADA sidewalks. We talked about that earlier as part of the paving deal. The shopping center, we'll move forward with that. And then the annexation plan.
No, the walkability, bikeability.
I don't know that we formalized that yet. That's the last thing we were talking when we broke for lunch.
Okay. All right. I was talking about that. Tenny said we have a plan that's already developed. I think you've made,
Just don't have funding
have
for
made a presentation a couple different times to us with that master plan.
Yes.
So that's already already accomplished.
So do we want to add that to the list of opportunities, the continue developing sidewalks? It kind of goes along with the ODOT sidewalk to Walmart and some other ones we're doing.
The listing is under parks. It's number 7 on the rating. Listed as parks, walkability, and bikeability. Are we all talking about the same thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Are we good?
Want to add that? Is that it?
Yes, no, okay.
Okay. So we done with opportunities?
I think for now.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is our well, as we do this, what we will do is take what you have now and use what we talked about today, the categories, infrastructure, economic development, go back to our 2017 you were reading from, and pick out the goals and objectives. And then from there, we'll pick up these specific items and put them under the right goals. And then we will come up with budgets, and we'll do a better job of defining milestones that we can, steps with timelines and who's responsible in the budget. And that's what we'll bring back to you in the near future for consideration. On the administrative goals, I just ran out of time last night and didn't get those finished, but we'll take our first draft that we've been working on and now adjust it based on what we learned today. So the next thing I'd like to do is go down to item number 6. And that is discussion potential action on special studies, inclusive of, but not limited to. One of the big ones I think we need to do is take our Public Works Authority utility. If we're going to talk about starting to plan ahead, and we're going to replace water lines like on a 30-year cycle. We're going to replace sewer lines on some cycle and maintain our system for water, sewer, stormwater, trash. We got to come up with what it would cost to operate that way and then compare that to our rate structure to come back, hey, if we're actually going to operate this like it should, this is the rate structure we need. Is the city council, because it'll take some money to do that, not an ungodly amount, but does the council agree that that we need a master plan for our Public Works Authority, the utility enterprise funds?
I don't know how you can function without it. I mean,
No.
if you don't have that, you're just reacting to doing crisis management. You need to have a plan.
And then once we do Public Works Authority, then I think we can step back and say, okay, we've done that. Now we can look at the general fund side of what I still call Public Works, the streets and stuff, and police vehicles and fire vehicles. I'd like to concentrate on this one first. The other study that I thought, there was two more, I'm gonna skip one and come back to it, but our swimming pool has so much age on it. Do we need to do a study of what we're going to do in the future relative to our swimming pool in Highland Park, determine how many years we have left in that pool, and maybe what our options are after it has reached its, well, I think it's already reached its full life, but we keep getting more life out of it. But I think we need to determine, how much longer can we continue to operate that? And then what's our options if, when it goes away, what are we going to replace it with?
I was swimming in it when I was 5 and 6 years old, and that's a few years ago. So you can imagine how old it is now.
Yeah,
It's 50 years ago.
I was
so
70 years, no.
That could be that too. So yeah, something needs to be done on that.
So is that another study that you all think is worthwhile to start looking at the Highland Park swimming pool and, how much life is left? When that life's up, what are we looking at? Are we looking at another aquatic center where you have zero depth entry with slides and then also competition lanes and swim lanes, or a combination of splash pad, swimming pool? I mean, I think we could look at various options to bring back to you and say, okay, when we do replace it, here's maybe 3 options, and here's the cost of those options, so that we don't say, okay, it's time to open the pool. Oh hell, we can't open it this year. We're kind of getting ahead of it. Here's, about 3 or 4 more years, whatever we find out, that pool's going to go away, and here's our options. So we can start thinking about, well, we need to start kicking these in place.
We ever talked about partnering with the schools,
Yeah.
so they have a swim team in the winter, and then keep it running 24, year round. Some municipalities do have a pool that is functional for the city and the school, and they share costs and all those kinds of things.
Altus is an example.
Altus is exactly what I was thinking of.
They have an indoor-outdoor pool arrangement, and they do use it for swim team. If it's going to be a swim team, there'd have to be an indoor portion of it, and that's pretty expensive. And we could visit with the school and see their level of interest. And yes, Altus is a very nice one. But even if you do an outdoor one, you could still have summer swim competitions, but if it's school, you're going to have an indoor option, and as I heard, YMCA may be another partner. But I guess the first thing is, do we want to try to get ahead of the curve and do a study of how much life's left and what our options are going forward?
It makes sense. When you say doing a study, are you talking about having a consultant come in, or is this in-house?
We would do a combination of in-house, we'd probably have some engineers look at some of it. I mean, the concrete's starting to spald off. I mean, how long can we actually keep that thing functioning? I mean, the makeup water, I don't know how many gallons of makeup water we're using ever a day.
We've roughly got about a 3-inch stream that runs continuously in that. We're losing that much water daily.
It's leaking out.
Leaking out.
When's the last time we had it replastered?
We paint it every year. I mean, to try to cover up. As far as plastering it, maybe, I mean, I'm guessing we probably have to go in there and sandblast it down to even get to a point of maybe replastering it.
Is that that wall?
The concrete is actually, I mean, you can say.
I know what they say. I mean, I've got a pool at home, and I've had a pool. I mean, they say a plastering, a concrete pool, you have it replastered about every 10 years. So have we replastered in the last 10 years?
No, we have not did any type of means of that in 20 years.
And that's something we could look at is, one, as it is now, how much life's left. If we do certain maintenance things, how much does that extend it? You know, we might determine it's got 10, 15 years life left in it when we get done. But we have to look at the pool itself. We have to look at all of the filters and I forget the terminology now. But there's a lot of components we have to look at. And at some point, if you have to replace enough of those, then you'll need to make a decision to move forward with something else. But we really don't have anything definite on it. We just know it's coming towards the end of its life cycle.
And a few things to add to it is diving boards. We used to have the high dive. We had the shorter one. We've had to eliminate them due to standards from the design of our pool. When you get into the deep end, it slopes.
And that's not just us, that's every pool,
Yes,
insurance companies.
We're running into those type of things that's taking away from our pool.
And quite frankly, the users dictate it to some degree because people don't swim like they used to. I mean, they're more into the zero depth entry and those kind of functions than they are deeper swim lanes in the past. Now, I think the deeper swim lanes still accommodate things like swim lessons, swimming exercise and those kind of things, but a lot of people go to an aquatic center more for the zero depth entry and the play features and the water slides, lazy rivers, those kind of things today than, you know, back in the 50s when they built pools. I call them cement ponds, but the desires of the public using the pool and what they're looking for is different today than it was when that pool was built.
Sure, I like to bring my arm floaties and my beer.
So how much, do you have any idea what a study like that costs?
I do not.
Okay. Does council feel like that, assuming it's?
I think it's a popular thing. The pool itself is a popular thing in the community. I think it's something that is going to need to be replaced or significantly rehabbed in the future. I think doing an assessment of that is just a no-brainer.
Okay.
The other one on the ambulance service, I think that we've identified some things relative to the ambulance service. One, we're going to look at our billing service. Is there one that might be more aggressive than what we have now? We're going with a collection agency. I made a pitch to the legislative committee for the Oklahoma Municipal League, and our state senator and state rep and OML are going to try to assist us in passing an amendment to state statute where we can put ambulance bills in the oh, I forget the terminology, Kim.
Tax recovery.
Yeah, the Intercept program, where if you have a income tax return and you owe an ambulance bill, it gets taken off the top. So we got pretty good support to pass that in the next legislative session. The part of the county that didn't have an EMS district has approved one now. I'm working with Senator Hall, and I'll give him credit for it. I might get just a tad bit, but on the tobacco money, there's several $1 million of new tobacco settlement money, the TSET, and we're trying to get all of that tobacco money allocated to rural health care, and ambulance would be part of that, so there would be another funding source. So I think we've done a lot of things relative to ambulance service and looking at ways to enhance the funding of that. So while we got all those things going on, I don't know if we need to do a study right now about a different model of delivery, or wait maybe for a year or two and put all these things in place, and then if we're not happy or satisfied and it's costing us too much to subsidize, maybe we might look at delivery system then.
One thing about the ambulance deal, conversation or two that I've had, and I don't know, maybe you know about it or don't, but Langston, we go over there a lot. I've had a couple of different conversations with a couple of people about maybe approaching Langston. When they enroll, you know, the students always have all kinds of fees. If we could talk to them about initiating that they pay some sort of a health services fee, and that goes into an account at Langston. It doesn't go to us, but when we go over there to service students, we can bill the university, and the university pays for that service. Because, I mean, when you enroll in college, fees they have a fee for everything. And, you know, you might have one kid that uses it 3 or 4 times, but you might have 3 or 4 kids that never use it. So if they just assess some sort of a $100, $200 fee when they enroll,
And
really
we have visited with the college about that. I didn't add that one to the list, and you are correct. Of course, the university doesn't pay property taxes, so when you create a ambulance district around them, they don't contribute to the property tax, and quite a few of our calls are generated by the students at the college. They were pretty adamantly against a few years ago, but I think their position is changing, and I think they're more open to that discussion, and you're absolutely right. We are pursuing some kind of student fee for ambulance service through them, and you're correct.
Okay, so there's no additional studies or anything needed at this time on the ambulance service then, right?
Those are the only ones that I thought of. Councilman may, or others may have others that they want to suggest.
I'm looking to see if there was anything, you know, we talked about several things that, for example, looking further into the sports complex. Do we want to mention that here? Since we're making a list of, or is that part of what the task force?
Well, it's already one of our priority items, so I don't know that it has to be listed a
Mentioned
separate
separately?
time.
Okay.
Step in what they're doing.
So not them, then those 2 studies, the swimming pool and a master plan for Public Works Authority, are the 2 studies that we'll try to concentrate on in the next budget year for future planning purposes.
And so let me ask you, do you want to just maintain this as a separate list, or do you want to incorporate that you're going to do these studies into part of your strategic planning as action items?
They will be, but they'll be listed under special studies. I mean,
Okay.
however you want to do it.
Okay. Because they can be part of, for example, under infrastructure, when you're talking about accommodate long-term infrastructure.
Projects, and these are studies.
Okay.
So, but they will all go in one list, yes.
Okay. All right.
On the last item we have, under discussion of potential of how we're going to use the CIP money between 2020 and 2030, my thoughts are at this point, when you look at our priority list, we have actually committed quite a bit of that money. And my thoughts, if council is agreeable, staff needs to go back and plug the budgets for the items you listed into the CIP in some draft format. And then when we come back to you with this strategic plan and the CIP budget, then we'll see how much money's left, and you all could at that time say, okay, well, if there's X amount of money left, we want to do this. But trying to add more to the list today, I don't know would do us any good until we see how much we've committed already. And Don did suggest during the lunch break something, and it's consistent with what we've done before on the money we set aside for streets is on our annual project, not use it all every year on the annual, but use, a portion of it for an annual overlay project and a portion of it to build towards a big project. And then, so if you got X amount, part of that would go to the annual project, part of it would go in a kitty to build funds up to do a big project like Sooner Road or 19th Street. And then when that built up, that year you would do your annual overlay, but you'd also do a big project. And I think that's a good way to approach it.
I think the street committee just covered that just a couple nights ago. That's kind of what we were thinking also.
So I'm not sure we really need to do 8 today, because we kind of did it earlier.
Yeah, and if you're not certain that if you feel like you've allocated most of the funds, then yeah.
And when we come back to the city council, staff will now take a couple of weeks. Basically, Kristen's going to send us notes. We'll try to flush everything out, get details on budgets, those kinds of stuff. Then we're going to meet with Kristen again and try to put something in more of a formalized document, come back to council. At that time, council can fine tune it, subtract, add, but then maybe once council does that, then we could have a formal adoption. And then quarterly, we could give an update report on those items so that you kind of know where we're at each quarter.
And I was looking at the lunch break. I don't have the one from last year, but the one from 2017. It is interesting that the goals, most of them were the same. We had accommodate long-term infrastructure, create and sustain a diversity of recreational, educational, cultural activities, some create and enhance the value of local economy through progressive business development initiatives, so economic development. So you all have a lot of consistency with regards to the goals. We were talking about a plan and what is the time frame, and so I think between now and when you get together again, it'll be important to identify, do you want to do a plan that has short-term goals, and what is short-term, how do you define that, and then long-term, so that you can break it down into more reasonable pieces. I think anything more than about 5 years and you run into trouble because the makeup of your council changes, and so the people who had buy-in on certain plans or certain projects kind of roll off, and then you lose those champions.
Council
And
Guthrie.
So think about, and Leroy and I will work on, like he said, typing up some notes and kind of putting it into more of a plan format. I know right now it just looks like
like a bunch of notes, but it will come together. But how you want to break down your time frames, and then again, a really key piece is going to be the milestones and the appropriate parties. And we didn't identify who the responsible parties were on opportunities, but I guess staff will probably do that. That's a really important piece of it. And then that either quarterly or mid-year review, and actually sit down and look at the document, which again, it will be a document and not a series of flip chart pages, and say, where are we with these different things? Is it still relevant? Is it still on track? Have we completely forgotten about it? But it's a manageable size list, it looks like, and listening to what you walked away with last year, that was a really long list, and even the year before, when I worked with you all on it, it was a pretty long list, and it sounds like you have a lot of ideas, but limited resources, and so if you keep it realistic, then you walk out of your year with a feeling of at least having gotten some of it done, and then when you go to your community and your residents, you can say, here was our plan, and here's some things that we got accomplished. So, but that's
reminding the city manager to change over. I thought he was going to die here, Leroy. I didn't think he was planning on going anywhere. You've not given us any hints, are you?
No, and I tell you, more, I guess I'll wrap up. I have felt more today, and I know we've got a lot of challenges and diversity of opinion on our council right now, but I felt more of a team environment today than I have in several months, and that really pleases me. And I will probably be city manager in Guthrie as long as the city council wants me to be here until I get old I can't find the office anymore.
We don't want
but you know, you have to renew my contract in September. I won't be here on October 1. But no, I'm not looking for another job. Christy and I love Guthrie. It's a good place to be.
Are there other comments or questions from council, things that you feel like have not been addressed that are key, or that you hear your constituents talking about that feel like need to be integrated?
Maybe not integrated here, but something I want the other members to think about. I've been talking about some people and things. I want all the members to think about maybe looking at an accountant position for the city. Because one of the main things, or one of the reasons for it, is Leroy shuffles a lot of numbers. You can see all these papers and things that he does. And I don't know exactly how many's from him, how many's from staff, but I get remarks from him a lot about shuffling these papers a lot, and these numbers take a lot of his time. And I think, myself, an accountant to handle like the numbers end of it, to handle the numbers load, and maybe bring the accountant in as an assistant to Leroy would give him more time to look at the management end of things. If we had somebody designated to track these numbers and make these reports and these kind of things, I think one would pay for itself in the long run, because we get a lot more productivity out of both of them. But I know that's more of a budget type thing, but I just kind of wanted to throw it out there to have you guys be thinking about it, that I think it would make us a lot more efficient in the long run.
Any other comments?
I heard you slip the word in there a while ago. I just wanted to comment on it. You said we haven't identified champions for these things, and that's a key word on these things. When we identify the owner of each one of those processes and the action items that go with them, that owner should be the champion for that, to make sure that it's being advanced and really owning it and taking ownership of it, and making sure that it is done, and that your name should be on it. And you should be proud that you're finishing your project. And I think that's the only one time you've used that word today, I think, is champion. I don't know how many people heard you say it, but I did. And I think that there's a lot of work left to be done by the staff to put the flesh on these pretty minimal bones we just gave you and to articulate some of this a little bit better. But I think you understand what we've said today, and I think you could probably do a pretty good job of that. But you do have a lot of the work is still left to be done. And we just want to recognize that that's laying out there.
I think our champions today, for most of the things that we've talked about, Tinny and Dan is going to have some pretty broad shoulders.
Yeah, it is a starting place, and this is one of those things that could have been a 2-day session, you know, which nobody wants that, and no one can focus for that long. But this is step one, and there's 2 or 3 other just as important subsequent steps, and some of those identifying the responsible parties and the champions will be part of the staff strategic plan and the accompanying action items for them for the year going forward. So yeah, it's a framework and a good starting place, but we'll fill in as we go.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I think I think a critical component here is our communication linkage with the citizens in terms of this strategy, in terms of these elements of that we hope to accomplish with the limited dollars that we have. James, you mentioned the Pine Street Bridge. I've had a number of contacts. I'm sure all of us have. And as soon as you say, well, we couldn't do anything because until FEMA declared that as an emergency for the community, if we put a shovel in the ground, we throw away 70 or 75%, whatever it is. And they say, oh, well, that's different. And the same thing with the Harrison Street. We were hoping that ACOG would be in a position of a grant fund that would be about 60% or so of that, 50%.
90%.
90%. And that's why it was a delay. But people, and if you say, well, if we wait till the next level of projects are looked at by ACOG, we might be able to get them to pay 90% and we only pay 10%. Well, that's a whole lot different. And somehow we need to, united, communicate that to all of our constituencies in terms of we're trying to do the best we can with the resources that we have. And being a good steward of those resources might mean waiting an extra year if we can get matching funds or 60% or 90% paid by another revenue source. So once you all put together your product and Leroy adds what the staff is going to do, we need to figure out a way that we can, how do we best communicate this to all of our constituents, to all of our community, and then as Z was saying, make sure we give an update periodically to them, because there is progress. We have made a ton of progress in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, a ton. And I think sometimes we don't even realize it. Certainly the community doesn't, because they're seeing it every day. But there's been a ton of change and improvement that's happened, and it'll continue.
And you're right, that's really important, is figuring out how to let the community know what those things are. And if you have a plan and you put it in some form where they can see it, either on the website and/or a nice full color glossy cardstock. And do that every year, and maybe a small area over on the side is completed projects from last year, or whatever, however you want to term it, so they can see, yeah, this is, not real text heavy, just real simple, but here's our mission, our strategic plan, these things, bam, 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 and this is what we accomplished.
It's kind of like our council meetings, the ones that are routine and boring, people don't pay a lot of attention to. So when we release this, if we could stage a street fight out front of it, then everybody pay attention.
If you did like a quarterly workshop, where you went through the strategic plan and showed this one's in the yellow, this one's in the green, this one's in the red, we're behind on this. and review where we are with all of these items. Quarterly, that would probably be a good way to
Yeah.
communicate that, to where we are with everything.
And I think even she mentioned being able to utilize the website more. Is there, like the Pine Street Bridge, for instance, I don't mean to keep repeating that, but you may have more information on that than what I had, or Jen might have had it, whomever got those phone calls. And at least if we had one central place where you could type in a couple keywords, that we could at least report back with where that currently, what the status is of that, or where people could search on the website themselves to see what the status is of that particular item. That way, if they don't go find it themselves, we have a central place to go get it without having to call Leroy and get the update. We can just search that on the interwebs ourselves, be able to then feed that back to them. I think that would be beneficial, just to try to help keep that communication. At least they could go search it for themselves if they wanted to.
Other comments? Council? Anything from the staff? Last chance.
I'm good.
Last thing I heard you say is you love Guthrie and you're going to be here forever.
I'm pleased with what we've accomplished today. I feel real good about what's been accomplished today.
There he is, man of the hour.
Lucky I would just like to say one more thing in regards to everything that Dan is doing. I know that he's, we talked about the comprehensive plan not being a plan and it's old. And so him being able to identify what things that are in there that are useful to him that he can help move us forward, I sure appreciate that. And being able to not have to lay out more money to try to build a new plan, but we can take what's good from that and move forward. I like Dan, and I like what he's doing.
Well, I got one.
You only need 3 more.
Anybody else? Okay, Kristen, thank you so much for facilitating this. It's been, I think, very successful. We'll look forward to the final product, which I know will be very, very well done, professionally done. Appreciate everybody for their active listening and participation. And for that, we're adjourned. Thank you.